Chapter 2908. From the beginning, Ancestor Mu was still inciting the relationship between Xiao Chun and Little Qing. In response, Xiao Chun replied coldly, "Isn't the origin world asking a tiger for its skin?" After the last battle, Ancestor Mu's words clearly didn't affect Xiao Chun because Xiao Chun had thought it through very clearly. To put it bluntly, wasn't it all because he didn't have the strength? Without strength, whether it was Little Qing or the origin world, it was the same as asking a tiger for its skin because he had no way of controlling his own fate. Even if the person was changed, the result would be the same. It wouldn't change just because the person was changed. Therefore, Xiao Chun didn't care about Ancestor Mu's words anymore. To forge iron, one needed to be strong. If one's strength wasn't enough, then one could only rely on others. This was a fact that couldn't be changed. Hearing Xiao Chun's answer, Patriarch Mu had a smile in his eyes. He understood that Xiao Chun had thought it through. But even so what? Many times, as long as a seed was planted, it would sprout sooner or later. There was definitely a gap between Xiao Chun's group and Little Qing, and once this gap appeared, it wouldn't be resolved so easily. Moreover, Ancestor Mu didn't think that his words would succeed. As for the final result, Ancestor Mu didn't care. It would be best if it succeeded, but it didn't matter if it didn't succeed. Just like last time, the three of them fought fiercely. Ancestor Mu attacked unhurriedly when facing the joint forces of Xiao Chun and Dongfang Yun. The three of them were entangled, and the people below were also fighting fiercely without fear of death. Especially the new cultivators of the origin world. They didn't have emotions and only followed orders. Ancestor Mu's order was to kill. Kill everyone from the various universes, even if they had to die. With Ancestor Mu's order, the cultivators of the origin world naturally didn't fear death. Facing the warriors of the origin world who seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, the people of the other universes were struggling to resist. However, because they had just finished a fierce battle, many of them were wounded. Thus, the battle had become more difficult. In the middle of the battle, two young men who looked exactly the same were working together to kill the enemy. Just by looking at the two of them, one could tell that they were brothers because the two of them looked too similar. They were not from the Netherchild universe, but experts from other universes. Both of their cultivation bases were at the progenitor realm. It was conceivable that both of them were famous experts in their universes. But at this moment, the two brothers weren't in a good situation. They were surrounded by more than 10 people from the origin world, and there were even 4 progenitor realm experts among them. These progenitor realm experts had indifferent gazes, and it was impossible to discern any fluctuation in their emotions. It was normal. Without the 7 emotions and 6 desires, the warriors of the origin world were still calm even in the face of such a fierce battle. They only knew how to carry out Ancestor Mu's orders. After glancing at the surrounding origin world warriors, one of the brothers said in a deep voice, "Brother, it seems like we won't have a good ending today." Even though the two brothers were progenitor realm experts, it was still impossible for them to defeat such a lineup. Not to mention, both of them were wounded. Then let's fight. Weren't you already prepared to die? "Ha, you're right, brother. In that case, let's fight." Even though they knew that they were going to die, the two brothers still didn't have any intention of retreating. They wanted to protect their home. The two brothers might die here, but their families and children could live on. Once the origin world successfully breached the Netherchild universe, their families and children would be in great danger. As soon as they finished speaking, the two brothers didn't retreat. Instead, they took the initiative to attack the origin world warriors in front of them. Facing the attacks of the two brothers, the group of origin world warriors also shouted coldly, "Kill!" Then the two sides clashed. Although the two brothers weren't afraid of death, as the saying went, 2 fists couldn't fight 4 hands. In just one exchange, the two brothers were at a disadvantage. Even so, the two brothers still fought to the death. They couldn't retreat in order to protect their families. There were many people like the two brothers. Almost all the experts of the various universes who came to support the Netherchild universe had the same idea. Protecting the Netherchild universe was protecting their families. They could die, but their families could live. Therefore, Many people fought to the death and didn't have any intention of retreating at all. When the nest was overturned, no egg would remain intact. Facing the threat of the origin world, these weak people naturally united. Perhaps this was the instinct of all living beings. They might not be as powerful as the progenitor and the world spirit, Little Ching. They might not even be as powerful as the ancient creatures. In the eyes of the progenitor and Little Ching, all living beings in the universe might be like chess pieces. They were just created by the universe and weren't worth mentioning. However, as the most basic part of the universe, all living beings had their own will to survive. Perhaps sometimes, even the universe didn't expect that the living beings it created had exceeded its original expectations. All living beings would be dissatisfied with the universe, but they also wanted to survive. This was especially true after they had feelings. They knew how to contribute, how to be grateful, and how to fight against the universe without fear of death for their families. This was the tenacity of all living beings. Perhaps they were born as chess pieces, but so what? They wanted to live and protect their families. This gave them the courage to resist everything. Just like the two brothers, they knew they were no match for their enemies, but they still chose to fight. In the fierce battle, the injuries on the two brothers became more and more serious. Although they had killed several warriors of the origin world, it didn't change anything. However, the two brothers still worked hard. After killing 6 warriors of the origin world in a row, when they were about to kill the 7th, they were hit by an ancestor realm expert of the origin world due to their carelessness. The ancestor realm expert punched them in the back. The violent spirit power instantly rushed into their bodies and shattered their vitality. Brother. Seeing his brother being killed, the other young man suddenly roared. In response, the aura of the young man who was hit had already withered. He looked at his elder brother and said with a smile on his face, "Brother, protect the family. Protect the Netherchild universe." Even on the verge of death, the young man still wanted to protect the Netherchild universe. He couldn't let the Netherchild universe fall into the hands of the origin world. Chapter 2909. In the eyes of the people from the other universes, the Netherchild universe was the line of defense that protected their families, so they couldn't lose it. As soon as he said that, the young man used his last breath. His eyes flashed with determination, and his aura suddenly became violent. In the eyes of the people from the other universes, the Netherchild universe was the line of defense that protected their families, so they couldn't lose it. As soon as he said that, the young man used his last breath. His eyes flashed with determination, and his aura suddenly became violent. Don't! Looking at his younger brother. How could he not know what his younger brother wanted to do? He knew he couldn't fight anymore. So in the end, he chose to self-destruct. He wanted to take a few origin world cultivators with him, even if he had to die. He watched his younger brother self-destruct, but unfortunately, he couldn't stop it. As soon as he said that, the young man self-destructed with a boom. Terrifying spirit energy fluctuations spread out wildly. It was everyone's belief to protect the universe, even if they had to die. They didn't hesitate to pay the price with their lives. Seeing his younger brother die, the older brother clenched his teeth and murmured softly, "Don't worry. I will protect the Netherchild universe." As he spoke, the young man attacked once more, and the cultivators of the origin world and the surroundings surrounded them once more. His younger brother's self-destruction had obviously attracted many people's attention, including Long Qing. Seeing her brother being surrounded by so many origin world cultivators, Long Qing forced back a world lord from the origin world who was fighting with her. Then, she turned around and rushed toward her brother. Being surrounded by so many origin world cultivators, her brother was naturally no match for them, so Long Qing came to his rescue. However, before Long Qing could attack, the world lord caught up with her and entangled Long Qing again. He wanted to lend a hand, but he was unable to do so at all. Long Qing was exasperated in his heart. On the other hand, it was becoming more and more difficult for the young man to hold on under the joint attack of so many cultivators from the origin world. The outcome was obvious if this continued. There were no unexpected surprises. After all, there was no way to make up for the disparity in strength. In the end, the young man was also at the end of his rope after being besieged. His choice was the same as his younger brother's. At the end of his life, he resolutely chose to self-detonate. His body suddenly exploded, taking several Origin World warriors with him. Seeing the two brothers explode one after another, and both of them were progenitor realm experts, Longqing's eyes flashed with helplessness and sadness. This was the tragedy of war. In order to protect the Netherchild universe, everyone had put their lives on the line. It was a matter of no choice, and there was no way out. Suppressing the sadness in his heart, Longqing knew that protecting the Netherchild universe was everyone's wish, and the only way to make the two brothers feel at ease was to protect the Netherchild universe. Thinking of this, Longqing took the initiative to attack and fought fiercely with his opponent, the World Lord. Things like these two brothers were not uncommon on the battlefield. Because they had entered the battlefield with injuries from the very beginning, the people of the various universes were physically exhausted. At the last moment of their lives, almost everyone chose to self-destruct. Even if they died, they had to kill as many Origin World warriors as possible to ensure that the Netherchild universe would not be captured. They had to protect their families and children. This was the thought in everyone's mind. Self-destruction could be seen everywhere. Xiao Chen naturally saw it, but there was nothing he could do because Ancestor Mu was still here. Xiao Chen's mission was to stop Ancestor Mu. Facing the continuous self-destruction of people, Xiao Chen did not feel good. He could clearly feel everyone's determination to protect the Netherchild universe and their families. However, such a scene would touch anyone's heart. Ancestor Mu said indifferently, "Xiao Chen, this is the final result. Even if you protect the Netherchild universe, so what? There are still people dying. Is this what you want to see? They died for their families and the people they wanted to protect. It's different from what you said. Is that so? But if the news of these people's deaths were to spread to their families, what would the outcome be? Will their families and children be happy? Moreover, do you think the spirit of heaven and earth will be affected by the deaths of these people? No. In the eyes of the spirit of heaven and earth, they are just pawns. If the spirit of heaven and earth really cares about the lives of all living beings, why won't it take action? You should know that as long as the spirit of heaven and earth takes action, this king is no match at all. It's hard to say whether I can leave safely or not. I might even be killed here." Ancestor Mu began to sow discord between Xiao Chen and Little Qing again. However, Xiao Chen did not refute Ancestor Mu this time for some unknown reason. Perhaps it was because the scene before him had touched his heart. Did Little Qing care about these people? The answer was yes. Little Qing did not care. In Little Qing's eyes, these people were indeed pawns that could be sacrificed at any time for its own benefit. Ancestor Mu was right. However, a cold glint flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. He said coldly, "You make it sound nice. Are these people not pawns in the eyes of the primogenitors like you? So what if they are? I don't deny that these people are pawns in my eyes. But so what? We are actually the same as the spirit of heaven and earth. Don't you know that? Xiao Chen, everything in the world and all living beings can become our pawns as long as it benefits us. It's the same for the primogenitor world and the spirit of heaven and earth. Since that's the case, do you still think it's right for you to help the spirit of heaven and earth? All living beings could be pawns as long as it was beneficial to them. Whether it was the primogenitors or Little Qing, they were like chess players. The world was the chessboard and everyone was the pawns. Without the ability to resist, they could only be used and abandoned. They had no ability to resist. Xiao Chen, open your eyes and see clearly. This is the result of you risking your lives to protect the Netherchild universe. In the end, all of you will die here. So what if you manage to protect the Netherchild universe in the end? Is this the result that you, Xiao Chen, want to see?" Ancestor Mu continued. At this moment, Xiao Chen's mind was in a mess. Protecting the Netherchild universe and stopping the primogenitor world had been Xiao Chen's belief all along. But even if it was true and he did it in the end, so what? As Ancestor Mu had said, Even if he managed to protect the Netherchild universe in the end, so what? Everyone would be dead. Looking at the silent Shao Chun, the smile on Ancestor Mu's face became brighter. He naturally could see that Shao Chen's mind was in a mess. This was exactly what Ancestor Mu wanted. Moreover, even if Shao Chun could hold on until the end, could he really guarantee that he could protect the Netherchild universe? It was impossible. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2910. The sounds of self-detonation from the experts of various universes were constantly heard. Everyone was using their lives to protect the safety of the Netherchild universe. Before they died, they would rather self-detonate to take away the enemy in front of them. It was obvious that these people had a firm belief in protecting the Netherchild universe. However, to Shao Chun, such a matter was indeed making his heart tremble. In addition, Ancestor Mu was constantly fanning the flames beside him. The battle was still going on, but Shao Chen's heart was already unable to calm down. Or rather, it was affected by Ancestor Mu. Seeing Shao Chen's silent appearance, Ancestor Mu's eyes were full of smiles. To put it bluntly, as a chess piece, Shao Chun was already a living being in the world. In fact, he had no choice. Whether he chose the spirit of the world or the primogenitors, the final result was the same. He would just become a chess piece in the hands of these almighties. It was another tragic battle. This time, the experts of various universes had suffered even greater losses. The number of casualties had already exceeded 500,000. There had been 1 million people, but now, less than half of them were left. These were the elites of the various universes. They had gathered the power of no less than 10 universes to gather so many elites, but in just a few days, more than half of them had perished. Of course, Shao Chen's side had suffered great losses. The Origin World's side had also suffered great losses. They had also lost more than half of their warriors. However, Ancestor Mu did not seem to care about this at all. After the battle ended, both sides retreated tacitly. However, after 2 consecutive battles, Shao Chun returned to his residence with an extremely ugly expression. It was not only because of the huge number of casualties, but also because of Ancestor Mu's words and the depression in his heart. Perhaps he really could not escape the fate of being a chess piece. So what if he was an ancient creature? Wasn't he still a chess piece and a bargaining chip for these almighties? Suddenly, Shao Chun understood that no matter how strong he was, as long as he did not exceed that red line, he would never be able to completely control his own fate. The primogenitors and Little Qing were fighting for the ultimate control of this world. No matter what the outcome was, Shao Chun and the others could not control everything. Sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard, Shao Chun was lost in thought. Qin Shru and the other women had been seriously injured because of this battle, so they had already gone into closed-door cultivation. In a battle of such a scale, even if the girls had the cultivation base of a world lord, it was still very dangerous. They could die at any time. Therefore, the girls had to recover from their injuries in the shortest time possible so that they could prepare for the battle that could break out at any time. This feeling made Shao Chun very uncomfortable because he could not control all of this, and he was powerless to change anything. So many people had died, but did Shao Qing really care? While Shao Chun was in a dilemma, the Qilin ancestor and another primogenitor were plotting something in an unknown space. The originally empty, mysterious space was now shrouded by endless blood qi. In the middle of the blood qi, there was a huge iron cauldron. There was still a raging fire burning in the furnace, and the blood qi that filled the sky was bursting out from the furnace. Such a dense blood qi made this space look like a bloody hell. Moreover, he could sense that there were countless souls floating in the air within the blood qi. These souls seemed to be unable to leave this mysterious space. Moreover, there was a mysterious suction force that was constantly sucking these souls into the iron furnace. He did not know what it was doing. From the beginning to the end, the Qilin ancestor and the other primogenitor did not participate in the battle. The two of them had been staying in the mysterious space. Now, the Qilin ancestor said with a smile beside the furnace, You can begin, Ancestor by. Ancestor by smiled and nodded. Then, the two of them formed a seal at the same time, and the temperature in the furnace continued to rise. At the same time, the blood chi became more vigorous. Finally, under the watchful eyes of the two of them, a surge of blood chi filled the air from the furnace, followed by a rich aura of life. There was life in the furnace. They did not have to wait for long. Soon, many figures walked out from the furnace. If there were other people here, they would be extremely shocked because the Chilean ancestor and ancestor were creating life. However, it was not accurate to call it creation. It was more accurate to call it resurrection. They were reviving those who were supposed to be dead. The souls floating in the air were those who were supposed to be dead. After entering the furnace, the primogenitors had used some unknown method to reforge their bodies and complete a certain level of resurrection. Perhaps only the primogenitors and little Ching could bring the dead back to life. Moreover, among the many souls, one could see that the warriors from the origin world who had died in the battle in the Netherchild universe had also appeared here. They were supposed to be dead, but their souls had suddenly appeared here. After the primogenitors had done something, they had come back to life. However, although they had been reborn, they were still dull and lifeless. They did not have any emotions or feelings. They were like walking corpses. Even so, it was already heaven-defying enough to bring people back to life. What did it mean? It meant that the primogenitors could have an unlimited number of warriors to serve them. Even if they were killed in battle, they could be quickly resurrected. It could be said that they were immortal. The Chilean ancestor and ancestor smiled when they saw the first batch of resurrected warriors walk out from the railway. Since a long time ago, the two of them had been researching ways to revive people. Now, they had finally succeeded. This way, just by relying on this point, they could exhaust the side of the land of creation to death. At that time, all the warriors from various universes would be exhausted. Xiao, Chun, Little Ching, and the others would become generals without an army. Then, victory would be within their grasp. Just as the two of them had successfully resurrected the first batch of warriors, the phantoms of the other primogenitors appeared in the mysterious space one after another, including Ancestor Mu, who was in the Netherchild universe. Ancestor Mu said with a smile as the primogenitors gathered and looked at the warriors who had come back to life from the furnace. Not bad. Their strength didn't suffer much damage. I didn't expect you two old men to succeed. The primogenitors were obviously very satisfied with such an outcome because the success of this meant that the origin world was practically invincible. Unless Little Ching could grasp the same method, the land of creation would have nothing to fight the origin world. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2911. Xiao Chun and the others didn't expect the primogenitors to do this. Reviving the dead was equivalent to creating life. It was as if the world had given birth to life. Moreover, from the looks of it, the primogenitors were obviously very proficient in this method. Those who had died could be resurrected in batches in a short period of time. In this way, the origin world would possess an inexhaustible amount of combat strength. Just like in the battle in the Netherchild universe, both sides had lost more than half of their people. However, the origin world had replenished 1 million people. On the other hand, Xiao Chun and the others had lost more than half of their people. In an instant, the difference in numbers between the two sides had been doubled. The primogenitors couldn't help but nod at the Chilean ancestor and ancestor by's results. This method was indeed enough to affect the entire battle. However, the world spirit should be able to do this too, right? Xiao ancestor said nonchalantly while feeling happy. If the primogenitors could do this, then Little Blue, as the world spirit, should be able to do it too. Moreover, with Little Blue's identity as the world spirit, it should be much simpler and easier. The primogenitors didn't care about this and said with a smile, "Of course, the world spirit can do it, but will he do it? Or rather, even if he did, would the others agree to it?" The Chilean ancestor said this. As the person in charge of this matter, the Chilean ancestor clearly knew the inside story. Ancestor by added, "It's true that the world spirit can do this, But there is a crucial condition for resurrection. It's also a prerequisite. That is, one of the 3 spiritual souls is missing a spiritual soul, and one of the 7 physical souls is missing a physical soul. This is also why only those who have their 7 emotions and 6 desires extracted can be resurrected. Otherwise, even the world spirit can't do this. Only those who had their 7 emotions and 6 desires removed could use this method to revive themselves. The primal ancestors nodded in satisfaction. This was also one of the most important reasons why they insisted on creating a new world. Thinking about it, all the living beings in this world could be reborn infinitely. They were not afraid of death at all. How terrifying was that? In the future, no one would die in this world. The primogenitors who had mastered this method would no longer be afraid of any challenges in the future. This was because the new warriors under their command were immortal and indestructible. They were not afraid of any battles at all. The spirit of heaven and earth could do this, but would he? Even if he was willing to do so, would Shao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others agree? After all, if Qing did that, then what difference would there be between him and the origin world? The reason Shao Chun and the others had resisted the origin world was because they wanted to stop the establishment of the new world. Now, if little Qing used the same method, then it would be meaningless for Shao Chun and the others to resist the origin world. Because of this, the progenitors were worried about Little Green. Even if Little Green did this in the end, it didn't matter since both sides were on the same level. Groups of warriors came back from the dead. Shao Chun and the others naturally didn't know what was happening here. After entering the truce period again, Shao Chun distributed enough elixirs for the warriors to recuperate in peace. Shao Chun had mixed feelings when he saw that half of the people were gone. He strolled around the encampment. Qin Shiru and the others were still in seclusion to recuperate. Shao Chun himself was fine. With the cultivation of an ancient life form, Shao Chun's recovery speed was simply amazing. Along the way, Shao Chun saw many people who were seriously injured. Of course, there were also many corpses. These corpses were collected after the war and would be transported back to their hometowns later. They had died on the battlefield, but at least their souls had to be returned to their hometowns. The expression on his face was a little complicated. Shao Chun didn't know how to express his current feelings. To be honest, Shao Chun understood Ancestor Mu's intention. He was trying to sow discord between him and Little Green. At the same time, he was trying to disturb him. Shao Chun knew that there would be casualties as long as there were battles. He had experienced fierce battles in the Great Thousand Domains. However, Shao Chun felt that something was very strange about the battle with Ancestor Mu this time. He couldn't put his finger on it for the time being, but Shao Chun felt that something was wrong. Ancestor Mu's abnormal behavior and the actions of many warriors in the origin world made Shao Chun feel strange. Don't tell me they want to wear us out, he thought to himself. From the beginning of the battle until now, Ancestor Mu didn't seem to want to occupy the Netherchild universe at all. In the 2 battles, Ancestor Mu had attacked directly and used simple methods to fight fiercely with his side. The casualties on both sides were almost equal. Shurian's side had lost a lot of people, and Ancestor Mu's side was the same. They had paid such a big price, but they didn't seem to be nervous. However, Ancestor Mu didn't seem to care at all. Logically speaking, Ancestor Mu and the Origin World's army had pressed the border this time to occupy the Netherchild universe. However, after 2 battles, Ancestor Mu hadn't achieved anything. It was a little confusing. From the beginning to the end, Ancestor Mu didn't seem to care about the casualties on the Origin World side. On the contrary, he cared more about the casualties on his side. Although the new warriors weren't too important to the Origin World, it wasn't good news for the primogenitors of the Origin World if all of them died. Moreover, Shao Chun had contacted Lin Yun. The situation on Lin Yun's side was the same. Qiu Zhu and Hu Huang, who were in charge of attacking Lin Yun's side, were the same. They didn't care about the losses on the Origin World side. They only cared about the losses on Lin Yun's side. This made Shao Chun feel strange. He didn't know what the primogenitors of the Origin World were doing. Shao Chun had been puzzled for the past few days. While Shao Chun was lost in thought, Xin Yuanling came to Xiao Chun and said to Xiao Chun with an ugly face, "Third brother, I have bad news." "What's wrong?" "The Origin World has sent another 500,000 soldiers. They're on their way. They should be the reinforcements from the Origin World." Hearing Xin Yuanling, Xiao Chun frowned slightly. More reinforcements? More than 500,000? What did they mean? Would they go to crush them with numbers? However, even if the new warriors of the Origin World had contributed so many universes, it was impossible for them to have so many people. Did they really want to cut off all means of retreat, regardless of the consequences? Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 2912. The Origin World had sent another 500,000 reinforcements, and they weren't far from the Netherchild universe. Xiao Chun felt a little bitter when he heard this news. Did the Origin World really want to disregard all consequences? After all, even though the emotions and desires of those new cultivators have been extracted and turned into existences similar to zombies, they were still living beings in the end. So, what meaning would it have even if the Origin World had taken control of the entire world, if all of their emotions and desires have been extracted? Would they become a general without an army? Thinking about it, if all the creatures in this world died in the war, then this world would be completely dead. Even if they won in the end, it would be useless. However, the Origin World was like this. It was as if they wanted to cut off all means of retreat and sink all boats. They didn't care about losses at all. They wanted to fill up the Netherchild universe, even if it meant using numbers. That's right. The feeling that the Origin World gave Xiao Chun was that they wanted to fill up the Netherchild universe, even if it meant using numbers. They didn't care about tactics or schemes. They just wanted to use numbers to win. However, did the Origin World know that they had so many people? It should be known that although the Origin World had conquered many universes, it had only conquered a little more than half of them. The rest of the universes that hadn't been conquered had joined the Origin World and joined forces to resist the Origin World. Therefore, the total number of people on both sides was about the same. The Origin World certainly knew this. However, even so, the Origin World's ancestors still chose to use the most brutal method to deal with this war. They wanted to use numbers to fill up the gap. It was puzzling. Did the ancestors think that the number of warriors in the Origin World was much higher than in the Origin World? It was impossible. Xiao Chun couldn't figure out why the ancestors were doing this. However, facing the attack of the Origin World's reinforcements, he had no choice but to continue sending reinforcements. Since the Origin World had chosen to send reinforcements, Xiao Chun's side had no choice but to do the same. Otherwise, with only 500,000 warriors, they had no chance of winning against the 1 million warriors of the Origin World. It was impossible to give up the Netherchild universe. Xiao Chun wouldn't agree, and neither would the others. After sending the news to the other universes, many warriors rushed to the Netherchild universe. Not only the Netherchild universe, but also the other universes where Lin Yun, Mu Ling Xian, and the Bee Slaves were, and also asked for reinforcements because they were facing the same situation as Xiao Chun. The Origin had also sent reinforcements. In the first round of attacks, the Origin World's ancestors, they would rather fight to the end than take a step back. In the Origin World's encampment in the Netherchild universe, Patriarch Mu smiled faintly when he heard that Xiao Chun had requested reinforcements. But if you have the ability, of course, Ancestor Mu wasn't afraid of fighting a war of attrition with Xiao Chun. It could even be said that Ancestor Mu couldn't ask for more. Now that the Origin World had mastered the method of resurrection, they weren't afraid of a war of attrition. Even if they had to kill all the new warriors, they could still resurrect them easily. On the other hand, did Xiao Chun have such a method? Therefore, after hearing that Xiao Chun had asked for reinforcements, Ancestor Mu didn't stop him. He even deliberately waited for a few days for Xiao Chun's reinforcements to arrive. The more people died, the better it would be for the Origin World. When most of the warriors in the land of creation were dead, it would be the Origin World's territory. For 5 days, Ancestor Mu didn't take the initiative to attack. According to the time, The reinforcements from the origin world should have arrived at the Netherchild universe sooner. However, Ancestor Mu didn't seize this opportunity to attack. If Ancestor Mu attacked immediately, Shao Qin's reinforcements definitely wouldn't have arrived. At that time, they could only fight with fewer people. It was obviously a great opportunity for the origin world. However, Ancestor Mu gave up on such an opportunity. He didn't attack immediately. Instead, he waited until Shao Qin's reinforcements arrived before launching the attack. It gave Shao Qian the feeling that Ancestor Mu was deliberately waiting for his reinforcements to arrive. Everything became very strange. However, facing Ancestor Mu's attack, Shao Qian could only lead his army to fight. The two sides fought fiercely again. Because of the addition of reinforcements, the number of people on both sides had reached 1 million. As soon as the battle began, the scene was very cruel. People kept falling. Shao Qian and Ancestor Mu fought again, but it was still the same as before. Ancestor Mu didn't seem to have much desire to live. When he attacked, it felt like he was trying to stall Shao Qian and Dongfang Yan. That's right. He was only trying to stall Shao Qian and Dongfang Yan. He wasn't trying to find a way to defeat them. Although the pressure on Shao Qian and Dongfang Yan was instantly reduced, Shao Qian was puzzled. If he wasn't thinking about how to win, then what was the point of this battle? Could it be that this was just a diversion tactic from the origin world? However, they had already sent one. 5 million people here. It was impossible to say that this was a diversion tactic. No matter what, it was impossible for the origin world to use one. 5 million people to confuse him. What exactly are you planning? Shao Qin asked coldly while fighting. Ancestor Mu smiled in response. He took his time to attack as he smiled and said, "Don't worry. You'll know soon. But before that, I'll say the same thing. Shao Qin, why don't you join our origin world? I can guarantee that we'll let bygones be bygones. How about it? Do you still want to say such nonsense? Forget it if you don't want to. However, you won't have any chance of winning this battle." It was another tragic battle. Both sides had lost over 200,000 people. Another 200,000 people had died on the battlefield. Even Shao Qian couldn't bear such a loss. Although the land of creation had the support of many universes, and the number of cultivators in those universes was definitely not small, no matter how many people there were, they couldn't withstand such a consumption. They had lost hundreds of thousands in one battle. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before all the living beings in this world were wiped out. They retreated again. Both sides still had a tacit understanding. Or it could be said that Ancestor Mu was very conscious. Every time the battle reached a critical point, Ancestor Mu would order the people of the origin world to retreat. Shao Qin and the others, who had experienced a tragic battle, didn't have the ability to continue pursuing the retreating origin world. It had happened 3 times in a row, but Ancestor Mu was still the same. He would suddenly attack and then retreat without any reason. It was simply baffling. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 29:13. After the battle, Shao Qin's group returned to their base. Shao Qin, Dongfang Yun, Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and Qin Shu gathered in the hall that originally belonged to Yinming. All of them were world lords. After the battle, Shao Qin's group returned to their base. Shao Qin, Dongfang Yun, Xinyuan Ling, Long Qing, and Qin Shu gathered in the hall that originally belonged to Yinming. All of them were world lords. Looking at Shao Qin's ugly face, no one said anything. After a moment of silence, Shao Qin took the initiative to speak. The origin world must be plotting something. There must be a problem. Ancestor Mu's behavior in the 3 consecutive battles was too strange, especially this time. From the beginning, he didn't attack at first. To the end, everything made Shao Qin feel that something was wrong. He had only suspected it before, but now, Shao Qin was sure that Ancestor Mu and the other primogenitors of the origin world were plotting something. Hearing Shao Qin's words, no one refuted because they also felt strange, especially Xinyuan Ling. The origin world's actions are indeed strange. There must be a reason behind it. There must be some other purpose behind it. I think they want to consume our strength. As soon as Xinyuan Ling spoke, He had guessed the origin world's true purpose. The origin world did want to consume the strength of the origin world. However, Dongfang Yin frowned and said, "But where does the origin world get their confidence from? The number of warriors we have isn't much different. Under such circumstances, do they dare to fight a war of attrition with us? If this goes on, what other result can there be other than a lose-lose situation?" From all aspects, the origin world did want to fight a war of attrition. But was it possible? Or did the origin world have this ability? In terms of strength and numbers, there wasn't a big difference. Under such circumstances, the origin world still dared to fight a war of attrition and exhaust the living forces of the land of creation. It doesn't seem to make sense, but from the various reactions, that's all I can think of, Xin Yuanling said helplessly. Some things seemed absurd, but in fact they were the truth. You couldn't do anything about it, even if you didn't accept it. If you're right, I think the origin world is hiding something that we don't know about. Anyway, to be honest, we know too little about the origin world. Xiao Chun didn't deny Xin Yuanling's assumption. He just thought that if the origin world dared to do that, they must have some tricks that people didn't know about. And this trick was the reason why the origin world dared to make such a decision. But what was this trick? What gave the origin world the confidence and capital to fight a war of attrition with the land of creation? This was what Xiao Chan wanted to know the most at the moment. However, he couldn't do anything about it at the moment. To put it bluntly, he didn't have a reliable source of information. Xiao Chun and the others knew too little about the origin realm. All right, we'll assume that the origin world wants to fight a war of attrition. What should we do next? Assuming Xin Yuanling's assumption was right, how should they deal with the origin world's war of attrition? Even Xin Yuanling fell silent, because they didn't have a solution. To put it bluntly, a war of attrition was an open scheme. Even if they knew the other party's intention, what could they do? It was impossible to avoid the war and give up the Netherchild universe. However, once they fought, there would be casualties. Therefore, even if they had guessed the truth, Xiao Chun and the others didn't have a good solution. They definitely couldn't give up the Netherchild universe. However, they didn't want to see the casualties continue. Moreover, no matter how rich they were, they couldn't afford such a loss. After a long silence, Xiao Chun finally made the decision. Let's scatter and fight the origin world. We'll turn the entire Netherchild universe into a battlefield. Our goal is to stop the origin world from using the Netherchild universe to threaten the other universes behind us. Therefore, as long as we can hold on between the Netherchild universe and the origin world, we'll succeed. You mean we'll fight as a guerrilla? Dongfang Yin was surprised. That's right. That's the only way. Stall for time and reduce our losses. This is the most effective way. We just don't let the origin world pass through the Netherchild universe. They couldn't fight the origin world head-on. Therefore, Xiao Chun could only come up with such a solution. They would scatter and fight the origin world as a guerrilla. Everybody pondered for a while. Eventually, they nodded and agreed with Xiao Chen's suggestion. It was the only feasible way at the moment. It was also the best way to reduce the casualties. Because once Xiao Chen's team scattered, the origin world's team would also scatter. At that time, it would be a small-scale battle. That way, Xiao Chen's team could retreat as they wanted. If they wanted to fight, they would fight. If they didn't want to fight, they could retreat at any time. They couldn't stop them. That way, they could reduce their losses as much as possible. Next, Xiao Chun and the others perfected the details. They formed a team of 100 people. There couldn't be too many people. They would scatter to different parts of the origin world. They would fight if they had the chance. If they didn't, they would wander around. They wouldn't give the origin world the slightest chance. Soon, they came to a decision. Xiao Chun asked them to make the arrangements. The team of hundreds of thousands of people was soon divided into teams of 100 people under Xiao Chen's arrangement. These teams were scattered to different parts of the Netherchild universe. Each team was led by a captain. The captain could make all the decisions without asking Xiao Chun and the others. Xiao Chun also led Qin Shiru, the girls, and dozens of Sacred Palace experts to form one of the teams. Xin Yuanling and Long Qing led the other teams. After everything was ready, outside the hall, Xiao Chan said to Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing, "Big brother, second sister, be careful. Don't take any risks. It's fine as long as you can stall the origin world. Don't fight to the death." Since they had made such a change, the taboo thing was to fight to the death. Xiao Qin's tactic was to be flexible. They had to make full use of this advantage. In response, Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing nodded in agreement. "Don't worry, third brother. I know what to do. It won't be a problem." Okay. After that, everyone split up and headed in different directions. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators who had been confronting the origin world had completely disappeared. They had scattered to every corner of the Netherchild universe. For a time, the original head-on battle had completely changed because of Xiao Qin's decision. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 29:14. Xiao Chan had changed his strategy. He didn't want to fight the origin world head-on anymore. Instead, he wanted to break up the whole force. Ancestor Mu naturally received the news as Xiao Qin's group moved. Xiao Chan had changed his strategy. He didn't want to fight the origin world head-on anymore. Instead, he wanted to break up the whole force. Ancestor Mu naturally received the news as well. Ancestor Mu wasn't surprised when he heard the news from his subordinates. On the contrary, he had a faint smile on his face. You could still laugh at this. Seeing this, Chen Yin, who was at the side, said indifferently. Xiao Chan had obviously sensed something. He didn't want to continue the war of attrition with the origin world. To put it bluntly, Xiao Chan had seen through the origin world's plan. The origin world was supposed to fight a war of attrition with the land of creation. However, Xiao Qin's group had broken up the whole force and started to fight guerrilla warfare. How could the origin world's plan continue? By then, it would take a lot of effort to find Xiao Qin's group. It could be said that Xiao Qin's change was aimed at the origin world. However, Ancestor Mu wasn't discouraged when he heard the news. Instead, he smiled faintly. Ancestor Mu smiled and said, "Why can't I smile? You're not too stupid. You know how to be flexible." Haha, are you praising your enemy? Of course. After all, it's meaningless if the opponent is too weak. So what are you going to do? Nothing much. Since they want to hide, we'll just find them. Ancestor Mu said calmly. It seemed like he didn't care about it at all. Chun Yin frowned slightly. Xiao Qin's group had started to fight guerrilla warfare. Was Ancestor Mu not going to change anything? Do you know that the Netherchild universe isn't small? Hundreds of thousands of people are hiding in it. It's like fish in the sea. Are you going to find them? Kill them one by one? If Xiao Chun and the others wanted to hide, it would be much more difficult to find them. After all, it was very difficult to find them when they wanted to hide. Moreover, if they were slightly careless, Xiao Chun and the others might seize the opportunity and even cause them to suffer losses. These were all problems that they had to consider. Chun Yin had indeed considered everything thoroughly. However, he didn't know that Ancestor Mu also had his own confidence. It was precisely because of this confidence that Ancestor Mu didn't panic in the slightest. Everything was under his control. With the ability to revive, the origin world wasn't afraid of Xiao Qin's little tricks. You want to use guerrilla warfare? The idea was very good and correct, but unfortunately, it was useless in the face of absolute strength. This was because the origin world could bear a much greater loss than Xiao Chun and the others. To put it bluntly, Ancestor Mu wouldn't suffer a loss even if he used 10 origin world warriors to exchange for one warrior from the other universes. The origin realm could bear the loss of 10 to 1 because those warriors could be resurrected soon after they died. The origin realm was not afraid of such consumption. So, even if Xiao Chun and the others were using guerrilla warfare, so what? Ancestor Mu could use 10, 100, or even 1,000 people to exchange for the loss of warriors from the other universes. Under such a premise, Ancestor Mu naturally had nothing to worry about. Chun Yin naturally didn't know about this. Only the primogenitors knew about this method. The others weren't qualified to know about it. Therefore, Chun Yan's worry wasn't unreasonable. Looking at Chun Yin frowning, Ancestor Mu chuckled and said, "All right, look at you. It's not a big deal. Let them do whatever they want. The final result will be the same. Chunyin didn't say anything after hearing Ancestor Mu's words. Anyway, Ancestor Mu was in charge of the Netherchild universe. He was just an assistant at most and listened to Ancestor Mu's orders. Since Ancestor Mu was so confident, there was nothing for him to worry about. Nodding, Ancestor Mu smiled and then ordered the warriors of the origin world to spread out and search for Shao Chun and the others in the Netherchild universe. There were no special instructions. There was only one order from Ancestor Mu, and that was to kill Shao Chun and the others at all costs. Even if it was 10-1 or 100-1, they had to kill the warriors on Shao Chen's side. It was a simple and crude order. Chun Yin helplessly curled his lips in response. From his point of view, Ancestor Mu was simply being reckless. If he had an overwhelming advantage in terms of numbers and strength, there would not be any problems. But now, the origin world strength was actually not at an advantage compared to the creation land. Therefore, Ancestor Mu still dared to use such a method? Chun Yin really didn't know what he was thinking. In a situation where their strength was equal, Ancestor Mu still wanted to use such a strategy without paying attention to the method. Chun Yin didn't know what to say. Apparently, Ancestor Mu didn't want to explain. For a time, the warriors of the origin world also spread out and rushed to various places in the Netherchild universe. The battlefield spread to every corner of the Netherchild universe. Shao Chun and the others had already gone deep into the Netherchild universe and arrived on one of the continents. Because of the war, the people in the Netherchild universe had basically migrated to the other universes behind. This was also arranged by Shao Chun in advance. After all, there were many ordinary people without cultivation. If they continued to stay in the Netherchild universe, the final outcome was obvious. They would definitely die. Migrating to the other universes behind the Netherchild universe could at least save their lives. Moreover, as long as the Netherchild universe wasn't breached, the other universes behind the Netherchild universe would be safe. The originally bustling continents and bustling cities had become desolate. Although it hadn't been long since the evacuation, it was already lifeless. They came to a city. The city wasn't big, but there was no one in the city. Shao Chun and the others found a courtyard and stopped to rest temporarily. There was no one in the city, so Shao Chun and the others didn't have to worry about anything. After rushing for a day, everyone took this opportunity to have a good rest. Accompanied by Qin Shiru and the other girls, Shao Chun was thinking about what to do next. He had made some changes on his side, but he didn't know what Ancestor Mu would choose. There was no movement from Ancestor Mu for the time being. Just as Shao Chun was pondering, a message directly entered his mind. It was a message from the person in charge of monitoring Ancestor Mu and the others. After learning the content of the message, Shao Chun's face turned even uglier because Ancestor Mu had ordered the warriors of the origin world to spread out and search for their whereabouts. Why would he make such a choice? It doesn't make sense. Isn't he courting death by doing so? Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 29:15. Shao Chun was puzzled by Ancestor Mu's choice. Looking at Shao Chun, who was lost in thought, Qin Shiru and the other women didn't disturb him. They also couldn't figure out why Ancestor Mu would do that. Shao Chun was puzzled by Ancestor Mu's choice. Looking at Shao Chun, who was lost in thought, Qin Shiru and the other women didn't disturb him. They also couldn't figure out why Ancestor Mu would do that. Logically speaking, since Shao Chun had chosen the guerrilla tactic, Ancestor Mu's best choice should be to encircle and annihilate them. He would divide an area and gather all the forces of the origin world to search this area thoroughly. Then, he would divide another area, and so on until Shao Chun's group was completely annihilated. This was the best method, and also the most troublesome method, for Shao Chun's group. After all, once Ancestor Mu did that, Shao Chun's guerrilla tactic would be very difficult to succeed. Even if they could harass the origin world, they wouldn't be able to cause any substantial damage to it. At the same time, it would be very difficult for those who were trapped in a specific area to have a chance to escape. If Shao Chun could think of such a simple method, how could Ancestor Mu not think of it? However, Ancestor Mu didn't use such a method. Instead, he used the most unimaginable method. Ancestor Mu had scattered the experts of the origin world and searched the Netherchild universe casually. Wasn't that giving Xiao Qin's group a chance to escape? One was in the light, while the other was in the dark. Moreover, they were both scattered. In this way, it was needless to say who had the upper hand. It could be said that Ancestor Mu's move had pushed the origin world to the edge of the cliff. It was definitely the most stupid choice, but Xiao Chun didn't believe that Ancestor Mu would make such a stupid mistake. After all, it was an ancestor's mission. After living for so long, even a pig would become smart. He couldn't figure out why Ancestor Mu would do that. However, whether Xiao Chun could figure it out or not, Ancestor Mu had done it. Moreover, in many places of the Netherchild universe, battles were breaking out. In a valley on the same continent as Xiao Qin's group, a team of Xiao Qin's group encountered the pursuers from the origin world. There were more than 100 people on both sides. However, Xiao Qin's group had known the existence of the origin world's group beforehand, so they had deliberately led them here. They had prepared an ambush in the valley ahead of time, waiting for the warriors of the origin world to walk into their trap. Hiding in the dark, the leader asked, "Are you sure? No one else?" They were afraid that they were the bait of the origin world. After all, how could they send only 100 warriors to capture them? However, after searching for several times, they didn't find any trace of the others. In other words, this troop of more than 100 warriors wasn't the bait of the origin world. "We've checked. There's no one else." Since they weren't bait, then? Cold killing intent flashed in the leader's eyes. He stared coldly at the advancing team of Origin World's cultivators. They had set up an ambush in advance. Moreover, both sides had the same number of people. There was no reason for them to lose. Therefore, the leader decided to kill the Origin World's cultivators here. As the Origin World's cultivators entered the valley, the talismans they had set up in advance soared into the sky. Trapping and attacking formations quickly enveloped the entire valley. The sudden change caught the Origin World's cultivators off guard. They were enveloped by the formations. Terrifying energy surged out from within the formation. Under the envelopment of the formation, a few dozen members of the group from the Origin World had perished before the battle had even begun. Moreover, the remaining members of the group were injured as well. This was the result of scheming. Even though both sides had the same strength, the Origin World's cultivators had lost half of their cultivators before the battle even started. Seeing that the traps they had set up were so effective, the cultivators hiding in the void didn't hesitate to charge out. Kill! Since they were already enemies with the Origin World, they naturally wouldn't hold back when facing the new warriors from the Origin World. After a series of attacks, the two sides immediately engaged in a fierce battle. There was no need to talk about the outcome of the battle. After experiencing the attacks of the formations, the Origin World's cultivators had lost more than half of their strength. Not to mention those who had died, even those who were lucky enough to survive were injured. Because of this, the Origin World's cultivators had gained the upper hand in just one exchange. They were suppressing the Origin World's cultivators. Such a situation boosted their confidence. No matter what, they had to kill the Origin World's cultivators here. For a time, their killing intent soared. Their attacks became even more ruthless. They didn't give the Origin World's cultivators any chance to retaliate. Even though they knew the situation was hopeless, the Origin World's cultivators still had no intention of retreating. They seemed determined to fight to the death. Even though they couldn't see any hope of victory, they still didn't have any intention of giving up. Both sides fought fiercely. Relying on their advantage in numbers and condition, the outcome of the battle was already decided. However, the tenacity of the Origin World's cultivators had exceeded everyone's expectations. They naturally didn't know that the Origin World's cultivators hadn't retreated because of Ancestor Mu's orders. Ancestor Mu had only given them one order, and that was to find the cultivators of the various universes. Even if they had to fight to the death, they couldn't retreat. They had to kill the cultivators of the various universes at all costs. The origin world's cultivators who had their emotions and desires erased only knew to obey the orders of their primogenitors. So, they charged fearlessly and fought a bloody battle against the origin world's cultivators. A battle that should have been decided a long time ago had lasted for a few hours under the tenacity of the origin world's cultivators. The final outcome was as expected. The group of over 100 origin world's cultivators had been annihilated. However, the origin world's cultivators had paid a price. Not only were they injured, but 10 of them had also died in the battle. Annihilating a group of over 100 origin world's cultivators at the cost of 10 of them was absolutely a great victory. But was that really the case? For now, no one knew what the origin world's cultivators were up to. After the battle ended, everyone's aura was slightly chaotic. Some of the injured cultivators were pale and short of breath. However, everyone had a smile on their faces. They felt extremely refreshed. Such a great victory made them feel extremely happy. Moreover, it seemed as if they had seen hope. They should be able to win this battle. Just like now, we didn't annihilate a group of over 100 origin world's cultivators. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 29:16. Such a crushing victory filled the hearts of the team of over 100 people with confidence. Although they had also lost 10 people in this battle, it was undoubtedly a great victory compared to annihilating all the origin world's cultivators. Such a crushing victory filled the hearts of the team of over 100 people with confidence. Although they had also lost 10 people in this battle, it was undoubtedly a great victory compared to annihilating all the origin world's cultivators. Of course, even if they achieved a great victory in such a small-scale battle, the impact on the overall situation could be said to be insignificant. It could even be said that it had no effect at all. But what if there were more small-scale victories like this? That would be completely different. And the reality was like this. Because Xiao Chun had prepared beforehand, the origin world side was like a headless fly. So, in the following month, many battles broke out between the two sides. Every time, Xiao Chen's side had an overwhelming advantage and obtained an absolute victory. Almost all of them had prepared beforehand. They had used talismans, ambushes, and other methods to take the initiative to launch an attack. In this way, they would determine the advantage and obtain the final victory. But every time, the origin world's cultivators seemed to be completely unprepared. They would rush into the encirclement or trap. News of victory kept coming in, and after a rough bounty, in just a short month, although both sides still suffered losses, the casualty ratio had reached 18:1. In other words, 18 people from the origin world had died, while only one person from Xiao Chen's side had died. Using one person's life to exchange for the lives of 18 people from the origin world. What kind of concept was this? It was no exaggeration to say that if this casualty ratio continued, the origin world side would have no chance of winning at all. Even Xiao Chun had a feeling of disbelief after receiving Xin Yuanling's message. It was entirely because all of this was simply too unexpected. Third brother, all of this is simply unbelievable. The casualty ratio of 18:1 is simply ridiculous. With such a high casualty ratio, if this continues, we can say that victory is in our hands. But I keep feeling that something is wrong. The origin world's reaction is very strange. They can't be so brainless. Moreover, since there are so many casualties, the origin world side still hasn't made any move. It's as if they want to walk this path to the end. It's very strange. In the message, Xin Yuanling appeared to be very happy at first. However, in the end, Xin Yuanling still reminded Xiao Chun that the situation was a little strange because the origin world side shouldn't be so stupid. They clearly knew that this method wouldn't work, but they were unwilling to change for a long time. It didn't make sense. Therefore, they had to pay attention to it. The others were overjoyed because of the victory in the past month. They felt dizzy, but Xin Yuanling was still able to maintain his calm. After hearing this, Xiao Chun agreed with Xin Yuanling's worries. If you really thought that the origin world was so easy to deal with, then you were gravely mistaken. As an ancient place that had controlled the world for so many years, if it was so easy to deal with, how could it have stood for so many years? To be honest, for so many years, the place of creation had been hiding from the world. The origin world was undoubtedly the master of this world. It wasn't difficult to see this when the world lords of other universes had to join the origin world. How could the various progenitors who could make the spirit of heaven and earth, Little Ching, have no choice but to temporarily avoid their sharpness, be so easy to deal with? Therefore, Xin Yuanling's worries were absolutely not groundless. However, what exactly was that old fellow, Ancestor Mu, planning? With such a casualty ratio, even the origin world couldn't hold on for too long. However, that old man seemed to be sitting calmly on a fishing platform. He wasn't moved at all and didn't seem to have any intention to change. Xiao Chun was completely baffled by this. What is that old man thinking? He muttered softly, hearing Xiao Chen's words. 100-Flower Fairy said, "Husband, could it be that he wants us to lower our guard so that he can seize the opportunity to annihilate us in one fell swoop? An arrogant army is bound to lose?" Xiao Chen asked. "That's right. He purposely wants us to be arrogant and complacent to lower our guard." 100-Flower Fairy's words weren't unreasonable. It was very likely that an arrogant army was bound to lose. However, wasn't it a bit too much to pay such a huge price just because of this? It should be known that if Ancestor Mu really had such thoughts, then the price he had paid in the past month was really too high. Using such a huge price as bait and not knowing if he could even catch a fish, it didn't make sense. It makes sense. However, I think it's more than that because it's completely unnecessary, Xiao Chan said indifferently. Then, he sank into contemplation again. As for 100-Flower Fairy and the other girls, they didn't say anything to disturb him. It was true that the victory in the past month was a good thing. However, everything was strange. It made people feel uncertain, and they didn't know what Ancestor Mu was thinking. Xiao Chen didn't have the intention to underestimate the origin world. Moreover, the origin world couldn't be underestimated. Even Little Ching had to treat it with caution, let alone Xiao Chun and the others. They didn't understand and didn't know what Ancestor Mu was planning. However, even so, Xiao Chun didn't stop them. Since they could annihilate more of the origin world's forces, why should they be afraid of the slightest thing? No matter what Ancestor Mu was thinking, as long as they could consume the origin world's forces, it was worth it. Although Xiao Chen's side would suffer some casualties in every battle, in his opinion, such casualties were nothing compared to the origin worlds. The ratio of 18-1 was definitely within the range that Xiao Chan could bear. Only a fool would refuse to exchange the lives of 18 origin worlds experts for one person. Therefore, Xiao Chun didn't have any intention to stop them. Why not kill if they could? Was it because they had doubts in their hearts that they were afraid of the slightest thing and didn't want to go? However, Xiao Chun didn't know that he had fallen into Ancestor Mu's trap because of this thought. 18-1 was an absolute advantage in anyone's eyes. However, it was nothing in Ancestor Mu's eyes. Not to mention 18-1. Even if it was 20-1 or 30-1, he didn't care. Ancestor Mu didn't care about it all. As long as he could kill Xiao Chen's people, Ancestor Mu would have succeeded. He didn't think of this at all. Of course, the main reason was that Xiao Chun didn't know about the origin world's hidden tricks. Please add, vote, recommend. Sword Master Vast Desolation's error-free chapters will continue to be updated in the handbar. There are no advertisements in the handbar. Please add and recommend the handbar. If you like Sword Master Vast Desolation, please add. Sword Master Vast Desolation handbar is the fastest to update. Chapter 29:17. Xiao Chan didn't stop them from fighting the origin world, but it wasn't Xiao Chen's fault. After all, who would have thought that Shi Yuanji had a way to come back from the dead? Xiao Chan didn't stop them from fighting the origin world, but it wasn't Xiao Chen's fault. After all, who would have thought that Shi Yuanji had a way to come back from the dead? Being able to come back from the dead was simply an unimaginable method. Therefore, Xiao Chan couldn't do anything about it. In the following period of time, both sides continued to engage in small-scale battles. On the other hand, Xiao Qian's side was still relying on the preparations, ambushes, talismans, formations, and so on to deal a devastating blow to the origin world. Xiao Qian's side had reaped a bountiful harvest during the 2 months of fighting. Although they had lost more than 100,000 people during the fierce battles, there were only about 400,000 of them left from the original hundreds of thousands. However, compared to the origin world, Xiao Qian's casualties were simply negligible. After 2 months of battle, the origin world was almost completely wiped out. Many people roughly estimated that there were no more than 30,000 people from the origin world in the Netherchild universe. What kind of difference was there between 30,000 people and 400,000 people? Moreover, if there were only 30,000 people left, it could be said that Ancestor Mu no longer had the ability to attack the Netherchild universe. In just 2 months, because of Ancestor Mu's wrong decision, it had caused such a huge change. The advantage of the entire battle seemed to be firmly grasped by Xiao Qian, and Ancestor Mu had become the loser. Unless there were reinforcements from the origin world, Ancestor Mu's defeat was certain. However, would there be any reinforcements from the origin world for Ancestor Mu? It should be known that the origin world had invested 1,500,000 people in the Netherchild universe alone. Moreover, these people weren't ordinary warriors. The lowest cultivation base among them was at the Dao transformation realm. Moreover, this didn't include the battles in other universes. Even the origin world couldn't send such reinforcements to the origin world. Moreover, the origin realm seemed to have lost a lot in the battles in other universes. It was even less likely for them to come and support the Netherchild universe. Moreover, even if the origin world sent more reinforcements, could they guarantee the quality of the reinforcements? If the origin world sent some low-level warriors, no matter how many of them there were, they would just be cannon fodder. He believed that the origin world wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Many people on Xiao Qian's side thought that the victory was already decided. They started to cheer in advance. It was really exciting to be able to defeat the arrogant origin world. Some even sent a message to Xiao Qian, saying that it was time to launch a counterattack. They wanted to drive Patriarch Mu and the others out of the Netherchild universe in one go. They even said that they wanted to severely injure Patriarch Mu. Launching a direct counterattack was something that no one had dared to imagine before. But now, everyone's confidence had skyrocketed because the advantage was too great. However, Xiao Qian didn't act rashly in the face of these suggestions. It was true that they had a great advantage now, but Xiao Qian still didn't dare to let down his guard. At this time, Xiao Qian had already met up with Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing. They gathered in a big house in the city and sat together. Xiao Qian looked at Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing and asked, "Big brother, what do you think Patriarch Mu is planning? He's really going to wipe out all his subordinates." Patriarch Mu didn't seem to have any intention of changing his strategy after 2 months. He knew that he had suffered a great loss, but he was determined to do so. In the end, it had created such a situation. Logically speaking, it was indeed the best time to launch a counterattack. After all, Patriarch Mu couldn't stop them with only 30,000 people. However, Xiao Qian still decided to be careful. Xianyuan Ling frowned and said, "Everything shows that we have the upper hand now, but it gives people a feeling that it's not real." Xianyuan Ling's words were very appropriate. They obviously had the upper hand, but it gave people a feeling that it was not real at all. That's right, it was not real. Was it real that they had defeated the origin world so easily? It wasn't that they couldn't accept the victory, but such a victory seemed a little too strange. What should we do now? Hold back temporarily? Observe for a few more days? Asked Xiao Qian. Yes, continue to observe for a while. Don't act rashly. Xiao Qian and Xianyuan Ling didn't lose their heads because of the victory in front of them. They thought that it was better to hold back temporarily and observe for a while. While Xiao Qian and Xianyuan Ling were discussing, on the other side, in the encampment of the origin world, where Patriarch Mu was located, the entire encampment of the origin world had become extremely deserted due to the heavy losses. There was no one around. In the spatial spirit ship, where Patriarch Mu was still sitting on the cattail hassock with a calm face. Chun Yin, who was sitting in front of him, said with an ugly face, "Patriarch Mu, what are you thinking? If we continue to fight like this, we can really return to the origin world. No, even now, we don't have any chance of winning. There are only 30,000 people left. It's impossible to take down the Netherchild universe with such a small number of people." Chun Yin was really anxious. He had watched how Patriarch Mu had defeated all his subordinates little by little. In the past 2 months, since he had noticed that something was wrong, Chun Yin had told Patriarch Mu more than once that they couldn't continue fighting like this. It would only cause the warriors of the origin world to die in vain. However, Patriarch Mu didn't care about Chun Yin's suggestion at all. He didn't seem to have any intention of changing his mind. Chun Yin was burning with anxiety as he watched hundreds of thousands of people fighting until only 30,000 were left. In response, Patriarch Mu just said indifferently, "How's the loss on Xiao Chen's side?" "Only a little more than 100,000 people," Chun Yin said gloomily. "Oh, more than 100,000 people died." "Patriarch Mu, so what if it's more than 100,000 people? Hundreds of thousands of our people died. Is there anything to be happy about with such a casualty ratio? Now, Xiao Chen's side has 400,000 people left while we only have 30,000 people left." Chun Yin didn't know that Patriarch Mu was still concerned about Xiao Chen's death at this time. Even if Xiao Chen's side had lost more than 100,000 people, what was the point? Compared to the origin world, the casualties of Xiao Chen's side were almost negligible. Seeing Chun Yin's anxious appearance, Patriarch Mu smiled faintly. Seeing this, Chun Yin said with a solemn expression, "Patriarch Mu, what are you trying to do? Please collect, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 29:18. In his agitation, Chun Yin's tone was somewhat disrespectful. Even though Chun Yin was an ancient life form, he could not speak to Ancestor Mu in such a tone. Furthermore, Chun Yin's words just now were more like an interrogation to Ancestor Mu. Ancestor Mu snorted coldly in response. Immediately, a pressure that blotted out the sky and covered the earth surged towards Chun Yin like a flood. Only when he sensed the pressure did Chun Yin realize that he had indeed gone a little overboard earlier. He immediately bowed respectfully. "Please forgive me, Ancestor Mu. I was too impatient earlier." Although Chun Yin's intention was for the origin world and he did not have any bad intentions, it was a fact that he had been disrespectful to Ancestor Mu. Seeing Chun Yin lower his head and admit his mistake, Ancestor Mu snorted coldly. "There are some things that you should not be impatient about. I don't need to explain to you what I did." After the scolding, Ancestor Mu's face looked better. Then, he said indifferently, "Don't be impatient. You will know my reason very soon." Then, Ancestor Mu waved his hand, signaling Chun Yin to leave. Seeing this, Chun Yin left the room respectfully and did not dare to say anything. He did not know what Ancestor Mu was planning. However, since Ancestor Mu knew what he was doing, Chun Yin could not say anything more. Even though Chun Yin was an ancient creature, it was inappropriate to question Ancestor Mu's decision. Time passed day by day. As the origin world suffered heavy losses, Xiao Chen's people became more enthusiastic and their fighting spirit soared. They kept suggesting to Xiao Chen that they should take the initiative to attack the origin world. However, Xiao Chen did not agree. Although it seemed that Ancestor Mu could not hold on any longer, Xiao Chen still had a trace of hesitation in his heart. It was this trace of hesitation that made Xiao Chen extremely cautious. At the same time, it was also because of this that Xiao Chen did not give Ancestor Mu a chance to deal a fatal blow. Half a month passed. On this day, Ancestor Mu smiled faintly and said to Chun Yin in front of him, "This kid is really calm. It's already like this, and he still doesn't take the initiative to attack." Xiao Chen didn't know that all along, Ancestor Mu had been waiting for Xiao Chen to take the initiative to attack. With such a huge advantage, Xiao Chen actually didn't take the initiative to attack. This was indeed something that Ancestor Mu didn't expect, and he was slightly disappointed. However, Chun Yin, who was at the side, did not understand Ancestor Mu's intention. Did Ancestor Mu intend to let Xiao Chen take the initiative to attack? However, could these mere tens of thousands of people stop Xiao Qin's attack? After the last reprimand, Chun Yin didn't dare to question Ancestor Mu's decision for the past half a month. However, he still didn't know what trump card Ancestor Mu had that made him so confident that he couldn't wait for Xiao Chun to take the initiative to attack. Looking at Chun Yan's suspicious expression, Mu Zhu smiled and said, "All right, I won't hide it from you. From the beginning of this battle, we were already in an undefeatable position." Following Ancestor Mu's words, only 1 day passed, and another million people poured into the Netherchild universe. These million people were the reinforcements of the origin world. Not only did their strength not decrease, but their numbers were also extremely large. The million reinforcements poured into the Netherchild universe again. In an instant, the situation changed again. Of course, Xiao Chun and the others definitely didn't know where these million people came from. This was because these million people were people who had died in the battle in other universes. For example, the warriors who had died in the battle in the Netherchild universe didn't continue to come to the Netherchild universe this time. For the time being, the primogenitors didn't want Xiao Chun and the others to know the secret of the origin world's resurrection. The origin world didn't want to expose such a trump card for the time being. Seeing another million people pouring into the Netherchild universe, not to mention Xiao Chun and the others, even Chun Yin was extremely shocked. Chun Yin, who'd sided with the origin world a long time ago, was naturally aware of the origin world situation. Logically speaking, under the circumstances that they'd lost so many people, it was utterly impossible for the origin world to dispatch another team like this. Not to mention that the weakest amongst the million people was at the Dao transformation realm. How could there be so many experts in the origin world? Chun Yin couldn't figure out the reason for the sudden arrival of such a large army. However, Chun Yin still saw some familiar faces among them. However, in Chun Yin's memory, these people seemed to have gone to other universes. Could it be that the primogenitors had transferred them from other universes? But if that was the case, what about the war in other universes? Chun Yan's heart was filled with questions. Regarding this, Mu Zhu chuckled and said, "There's nothing to be surprised about. I've already said that from the beginning of this battle, we were already in an undefeatable position." This, Chun Yin didn't know what to say. Since Mu Zhu had said so, Chun Yin just nodded. Chun Yin wasn't the only one who was shocked. Xiao Chun and the others were also shocked. They thought that victory was in their hands, but when they suddenly heard that the origin world had sent another million people into the Netherchild universe, everyone was in a bad mood. How could there be so many warriors in the origin world? They had already lost 1.5 million people. Now another 1 million people had come. Moreover, according to the information they had, the quality of these 1 million people hadn't decreased at all. The weakest one was at the Dao transformation realm. Where did so many experts come from? They had spent so much effort to kill so many people from the origin world, but in the blink of an eye, another 1 million people had entered the Netherchild universe. Everyone was in a bad mood. Similarly, after hearing this news, Xiao Chen also frowned. He also couldn't figure out where these 1 million people came from. However, the only fortunate thing was that Xiao Chun didn't let the previous victory go to his head. In the face of such a great advantage, Xiao Chun didn't take the initiative to attack Mu Zhu. If Xiao Chun didn't hold back and chose to take the initiative to attack, the consequences would be unimaginable. These 1 million people were enough to annihilate Xiao Chun and the others. In Xiao Chun's opinion, this was a trap set by Mu Zhu, and he was just waiting for him to jump into it. Fortunately, he didn't fall into the trap and didn't stupidly jump into it, causing Mu Zhu's plan to fail completely. But even so, the current situation was extremely unfavorable for Xiao Chun, because with the appearance of these 1 million people, the situation changed instantly. Xiao Chun and the others went from having a great advantage to being at a complete disadvantage. The number of people had more than doubled. Moreover, it was very difficult for the other universes behind them to stop such reinforcements from coming. Compared to before, the situation would only get worse. This was the most worrying thing. At the same time, What worried Xiao Chun even more was the depth of the origin world and the various hidden trump cards and methods they had. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2919. Xiao Chun was most worried about the origin world's foundation and hidden means. Originally, he thought that the origin world wouldn't be able to do anything after losing one. 5 million people in the Netherchild universe. However, who would have thought that another million reinforcements would enter the Netherchild universe in just a blink of an eye, and the quality of the reinforcements wasn't reduced at all? Xiao Chun was most worried about the origin world's foundation and hidden means. Originally, he thought that the origin world wouldn't be able to do anything after losing one. 5 million people in the Netherchild universe. However, who would have thought that another million reinforcements would enter the Netherchild universe in just a blink of an eye, and the quality of the reinforcements wasn't reduced at all? Could it be that the origin world had more warriors hiding in the dark? But how is that possible? One had to know that even if a warrior in the Tao transformation realm was nothing in the eyes of Xiao Chun and the others, he was still not someone who could appear so casually. It should be known that a Tao transformation realm warrior was an existence that had cultivated for many years. Although there were many of them in the entire world, there weren't many of them. However, the origin world had already invested too. 5 million people in the Netherchild universe. What kind of concept was that? Sitting together with Xinyuan Ling and Long Qing. Everyone's faces were very ugly. Xiao Chun even asked Xinyuan Ling, "Big brother, in your estimation, how many reinforcements can those universes provide to the Netherchild universe?" "At most, 1 million. This is the last force. After all, it's not just our Netherchild universe. The other universes also need reinforcements. If 1 million people are used up, the universes behind us won't have any more reinforcements." Xinyuan Ling answered honestly to Xiao Chen's question. The universes behind them could only provide 1 million more reinforcements to the Netherchild universe at most. Of course, this was the result of them using up all their resources. Xiao Chun fell into silence. Both sides should be equal in strength, but why did the number of warriors from the origin realm seem to be much higher than his side? Could this be the source of Ancestor Mu's confidence? He muttered softly. Now, Xiao Chun had two choices. One was to ask for more reinforcements, but after this round of reinforcements, the various universes behind him would be completely destroyed. Not only did they have to support Xiao Chun, but they also had to support Lin Yun, Mu Ling Xian, and the Beast Slave. The other option was to continue the guerrilla warfare with the current people and try their best to keep Patriarch Mu and the others in the Netherchild universe. However, the pressure would be unimaginable. It was difficult for 400,000 people to deal with 1 million people. Needless to say, everyone should be very clear about this. While Xiao Chun was deep in thought, Long Qing said, "Little brother, do you think the origin world has transferred people from other universes? After all, they suffered a great loss in the Netherchild universe. If that's the case, they still have the power to fight." Long Qing guessed that these 1 million people might have been transferred from Lin Yun, Mu Ling Xian, and the Beast Slave. If that was the case, the situation wouldn't be too bad. In response, Xiao Chun said, "It's possible. I'll contact Lin Yun and the others in a while." This was good news. However, he would have to contact Lin Yun and the others to confirm the details. If it was really as Long Qing guessed, then it would be easy for Xiao Chun to deal with. As long as he could delay these 1 million people and let Lin Yun and the others take the opportunity to launch a counterattack, there would definitely be unexpected gains. After all, if these 1 million people were really transferred from Lin Yun and the others, then the pressure on Lin Yun and the others would be greatly reduced. At the same time, they would be able to launch a counterattack. However, to Xiao Chen's disappointment, after contacting Lin Yun and the others, this idea instantly vanished. "Brother Xiao Chun, what are you talking about? The origin world didn't transfer any troops from our side. Not only that, but they also sent 1 million reinforcements. We can't hold on anymore." "Transfer troops?" "No. Not only that, but they also sent 1 million reinforcements. Lin Yun, Mu Ling Xian, and the bee slave all said that the origin world didn't transfer any troops from their side to the Netherchild universe. Not only that, but they even sent 1,000,000 reinforcements, which made the three of them complain incessantly. This time, the origin world had launched an attack on the four universes at the same time. At this moment, they had sent 1,000,000 reinforcements to the four universes at the same time. In other words, the origin world had sent 4,000,000 people to the battlefield at the same time. Hearing this news, Xiao Chun was a little dazed. Where did these 4,000,000 people come from? How could the origin world still have 4,000,000 reinforcements to transfer? He thought that the situation on Lin Yun's side would be better. Who knew that not only was it not good, but it was even worse than the Netherchild universe. The development of the situation seemed to be completely beyond everyone's imagination. The strength that the origin world had displayed was also completely different from what they had expected before the war. After contacting Lin Yun and the others, Xiao Chun asked Xianyuan Ling helplessly, where did the origin world find so many people? According to the information they had, the number of warriors from the origin world had already overwhelmed them. Up until now, the origin world had still been able to send 4,000,000 warriors to support them. Compared to Xiao Chen's team, even if the other universes behind them did their best, they wouldn't be able to send another 4,000,000 warriors to support them. Theoretically, the number of people on both sides should be equal. However, as the battle continued, the number of warriors from the origin world had exceeded the number of warriors from the origin world by so much. So, where did these extra people come from? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xianyuan Ling's face was extremely heavy. The situation was worse than they had imagined. Not only could they not share the burden of Xiao Chun, but they couldn't even protect themselves. Even Lin Yun couldn't help but tease him. Brother Xiao Chun, if you didn't mention it, I would have asked them to send reinforcements. The people from the origin world seemed to be endless. Lin Yun wanted Xiao Chun to send reinforcements, but now, how could Xiao Chun support Lin Yun? Xiao Chun couldn't deal with the sudden appearance of this army of 1,000,000, let alone help Lin Yun. The situation of the four universes was almost the same. They were all in a terrible situation. Facing Xiao Chen's question, Xianyuan Ling pondered for a while, and then answered, I don't think there's a problem with the number of reinforcements. The origin world must be hiding something. After all, there are only so many creatures in this world, and the origin world has only contributed a few universes. It's impossible to have so many people. I think the answer lies with the primogenitors. Is it the primogenitors doing? Murmured Xiao Chun. This was indeed the most likely guess. However, what exactly did the primogenitors do behind the scenes to make the warriors from the origin world unable to defeat them? No matter how many they killed, reinforcements would appear endlessly. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2920. This was Xianyuan Ling's guess that the primogenitors were hiding something behind the scenes. In fact, this guess was correct. However, Xiao Chun and the others hadn't expected that the primogenitors could resurrect those who had died in battle. This was Xianyuan Ling's guess that the primogenitors were hiding something behind the scenes. In fact, this guess was correct. However, Xiao Chun and the others hadn't expected that the primogenitors could resurrect those who had died in battle. They hadn't realized this yet. However, Xiao Chun and the others felt more and more pressure in the following period of time. After receiving more than 1,000,000 reinforcements, Ancestor Mu began to encircle and annihilate them without any scruples. It was still the same as before. There was no strategy. Anyway, there was only one goal, which was to kill the experts of the various universes at all costs. Xiao Chun and Xianyuan Ling were both angry and helpless about this. They were facing the same situation, but the pressure now was simply much greater than before. Previously, when facing Ancestor Mu's encirclement, the experts of the various universes had relied on various means to gain a lot of advantages. However, this time, they naturally couldn't gain any advantages when facing the origin realm, which had more people. First of all, the number of people on their side had decreased. Second, the number of people on the other side had increased. Under this situation, it would be difficult to gain much even if they were prepared. After all, when facing such a huge difference in numbers, any means would become somewhat pale and powerless. Although the Origin Realm was still at a disadvantage in terms of casualties, Xiao Chun and the others weren't happy at all because this little advantage couldn't change anything at all. On the contrary, as the battle continued, the number of people on their side decreased. This was the most troublesome thing for Xiao Chun. After persisting bitterly for another half a month, Xiao Chun only had less than 300,000 subordinates left. More than 100,000 people had died in the battle. As the number of people decreased, Xiao Chun realized that it was impossible to fight a war of attrition with the Origin Realm. He didn't know what the primogenitors were hiding, but he was sure that they absolutely couldn't fight a war of attrition with the Origin Realm. This was because from various signs, Ancestor Mu wasn't afraid of fighting a war of attrition at all. In fact, this old man was eager to fight a war of attrition and didn't care about the losses on his side at all. No, I have to go to the place of creation. Protect me, Xiao Chun said after he had arrived at a new continent and avoided the pursuit of the Origin world. He had finally found a place to stay for the time being. Xiao Chun wanted to know what the primogenitors were doing behind the scenes and why there were so many warriors under their command. If he couldn't figure this out, he wouldn't be able to continue contending with Ancestor Mu, nor would he be able to think of a suitable solution. However, Xiao Chun didn't think he could figure out the scheme behind the Origin world. Moreover, he couldn't leave the Netherchild universe, so he could only ask Little Qing to do it. There was no reliable source of information in the Origin world at all, so he could only rely on Little Qing. With Little Qing's strength, he should be able to find some clues if he acted personally. Qin Shu and the other girls nodded when they heard that Xiao Chun wanted to go to the place of creation. Of course, Xiao Chun couldn't really go there. He would just send his soul shadow. With the connection of the formation, Xiao Chun could use his soul shadow to go to the place of creation. Xiao Chun closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. At the same time, in the place of creation, Xiao Chun's soul shadow appeared in front of Little Qing out of thin air. Little Qing wasn't too surprised to see Xiao Chun appear. She said calmly, "Are you in trouble?" "Yes. I don't know what the primogenitors are hiding behind the scenes. The warriors under their command seem to be endless." In response to Little Qing's question, Xiao Chun didn't hide anything and directly nodded. Although Ancestor Mu had been inciting the relationship between Xiao Chun and Little Qing, Xiao Chun knew very well that he and Little Qing were still in the same boat. He had to believe in Little Qing. On the other hand, Little Qing naturally paid attention to the war in the four universes. She also noticed something unusual. Now that she heard Xiao Chun's words, Little Qing asked naturally, "You want to make a trip to the Origin world?" Xiao Chun nodded when he heard this. Indeed, only Little Qing could do such a thing. They had to force their way into the Origin world and see what the primogenitors were up to before they could force their way out. This was the only way. Xiao Chun agreed with Little Qing's guess, and Little Qing didn't refuse. After all, according to the current situation, the land of creation had no chance of winning at all if they continued to fight. The endless reinforcements from the Origin world were simply exhausting the land of creation. Even though there were many warriors under the command of the land of creation, and Little Qing had not even sent out all the living beings in the land of creation, and had only relied on the power of the various universes to fight until now, they could not withstand such exhaustion. Therefore, it was necessary to find out what the primogenitors were doing behind the scenes. Moreover, they had to find out as soon as possible. Little Qing nodded in agreement. "Okay, but you have to hold on. Otherwise, once the Netherchild universe is breached, it won't help even if I find out the truth." "I know, but I can't hold on for too long. The difference in numbers is too great. Give me 10 days. "Okay." Little Qing needed 10 days to find out the truth. During these 10 days, Xiao Chun had to rely on the 200,000 people under his command to hold on. They couldn't let Ancestor Mu conquer the Netherchild universe. Otherwise, even if Little Qing found something, it would be meaningless. Xiao Chun naturally knew the importance of this, so he nodded in agreement without hesitation. It wasn't impossible for 200,000 people to hold on for 10 days. After receiving Little Qing's answer, Xiao Chen's phantom quickly dissipated. Little Qing also disappeared inexplicably. It seemed that they had gone to the origin world. It was difficult for others to enter the origin world without the consent of the primogenitors, but it wasn't a problem for Little Qing. After all, Little Qing was a world spirit. Xiao Chen was very relieved to leave the matter to Little Qing. If even Little Qing could not do it, then there was probably no one else in the world who could. In the Netherchild universe, Xiao Chen slowly opened his eyes. Seeing this, Qin Shu and the other girls hurriedly asked, "How is it?" "Hang in there for another 10 days, and you'll get the answer," Xiao Chen replied simply. After 10 days, Little Qing should have an answer. As for how to hold on during these 10 days, Xiao Chen had to figure it out himself. At least in these 10 days, no reinforcements would come. Xiao Chen was very clear about this, but he had never hoped for it. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 29-21. Xiao Chen's side still needed to hold on for 10 more days. Hearing this, Qin Shu and the other girls revealed a solemn expression. It was too difficult for them to hold on for 10 more days with just over 200,000 people. Xiao Chen's side still needed to hold on for 10 more days. Hearing this, Qin Shu and the other girls revealed a solemn expression. It was too difficult for them to hold on for 10 more days with just over 200,000 people. Xiao Chen comforted them. "Don't worry, we still have a chance. After all, we just need to hold Ancestor Mu back." They didn't need to win. They just needed to hold on. Then, Xiao Chen sent an order to Xian Yuanling, Long Qing, and the other world lords of the other universes. He told them not to take the initiative to fight with the people of the origin world. In the next 10 days, they should focus on harassing the people of the origin world. They shouldn't take the initiative to fight. They should try their best to preserve their strength. As for the people of the origin world, they should harass them if they had the chance. If they didn't, they should just forget about it. They couldn't take the initiative to fight with the people of the origin world. Of course, they would obey Xiao Chen's order. In order to hold on for 10 days, Xiao Chen had to change his plan as soon as possible. On the other side, Little Qing, who was heading to the origin world alone, had arrived at the entrance of the origin world. This was the origin world. It was a world created by the primogenitors. They wanted to replace the land of creation. Although the primogenitors had set up layers of restrictions at the entrance of the origin world, they couldn't stop Little Qing at all. They entered the origin world smoothly. Looking at the origin world in front of them, Little Qing's face darkened instantly. With Little Qing's eyesight, it wasn't difficult for her to see that the so-called origin world was imitating the origin world in many places. However, it couldn't be compared to the land of creation. After all, the land of creation was created by nature while the origin world was man-made. The difference between the two was more than one level. Even so, it wasn't difficult to see the ambition of the primogenitors from the origin world. They wanted to act on behalf of nature and make the origin world replace the land of creation. They wanted to become the true ruler of this world. A bunch of D***MN bastards. Little Qing cursed under her breath. However, she didn't do anything out of line. Little Qing knew the mission of coming to the origin world this time was to find the secret of the endless soldiers. What was the reason that made the origin world had so many warriors? It was as if they couldn't kill all of them. She hid herself and searched around the origin world. Since Little Qing didn't want to expose her whereabouts, of course, the people in the origin world couldn't sense her. Moreover, when the battle broke out, almost all the experts in the origin world were gathered in the front line. In fact, there weren't many experts in the origin world. There wasn't even a single ancestor, so the origin world was too strange. There are only 6 at the front. Where did the Qilin ancestor and the white ancestor go? Little Qing naturally knew the number of primogenitors at the front. She also knew that the Qilin ancestor and the white ancestor hadn't appeared since the beginning. He'd originally thought that the two of them were guarding the origin world to protect it. However, it seemed like he'd been wrong. There was no trace of the primogenitor in the origin world. If the Chilean ancestor and the white ancestor weren't in the origin world, then where did they go? Little Ching was puzzled. She started to search more carefully. Because there wasn't a single primogenitor in the origin world, Little Ching was able to act even more fearlessly. Because besides the primogenitors and the ancient living beings, it was impossible for anyone else, including the world masters, to notice Little Ching so long as she didn't take the initiative to show herself or reveal her aura. Little Ching didn't have to worry about her whereabouts being discovered. She only had one thought now, and that was to find the Chilean ancestor and the white ancestor. The other 6 primogenitors were at the front line. Only the Chilean ancestor and the white ancestor hadn't shown themselves. Therefore, Little Ching believed that the secret of the endless supply of primogenitors in the origin world must be with the Chilean ancestor and the white ancestor. As long as she could find the Chilean ancestor and the white ancestor, she would be able to solve the secret. Then, the land of creation would be able to react accordingly. After finding a breakthrough, Little Ching's main goal was to find the Chilean ancestor and the white ancestor. Unfortunately, Little Ching couldn't find any trace of them after searching the entire origin world. She couldn't even find a trace of their aura. Are they not in the origin world? Little Ching was puzzled. But where could they be if they weren't in the origin world? In one of the small worlds in the origin world? But that was impossible. Little Ching had searched all those small worlds, but she still couldn't find any clues. While Little Ching was pondering about where to look, she suddenly felt an extremely small spatial fluctuation. Space origin. Little Ching frowned when she sensed the energy of the space origin, but she quickly relaxed. No wonder she couldn't find them. They were hiding here. Ancestor Mu, Ancestor Ching, and the others had used the power of the space origin. Although she didn't know why the space origin would help the primogenitors, everything made sense if it was the space origin. It was very likely that the primogenitors had used the power of the space origin to create a small world. A small world created by using the power of the space origin was completely different from an ordinary small world. Firstly, the space was very stable. Secondly, it was extremely difficult to discover, especially at the entrance. No wonder she couldn't find any clues earlier. So that was the reason. After figuring everything out, Little Ching followed the faint spatial fluctuation and quickly found a secret entrance. Little Ching sneered and entered the small world in a flash. However, as soon as she entered the small world, Little Ching's face turned gloomy. The sky of the small world was blood red, and there were many souls floating around. Moreover, in the center of the small world, there was a huge cauldron that was constantly spitting out dense blood chi. Seeing this, Little Ching's anger erupted like a volcano. She gritted her teeth and said, "These fellows really want to act on behalf of the heavens. These guys really want to walk on behalf of the heavens. To think that they could actually do such a thing. No wonder those warriors can appear endlessly. So that's why. They're courting death." The fury in her eyes seemed as if it wanted to burn the heavens. She had never seen Little Ching so angry before. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Sword Master 8 Desolation's error-free chapters will continue to be updated in the handbar. There are no advertisements in the handbar. Please add and recommend the handbar. If you like Sword Master 8 Desolation, please add. Sword Master 8 Desolation handbar is the fastest to update. Chapter 29-22. Little Ching was infuriated. The reason was simple. The actions of the primogenitors were disrespectful to the world. They were trampling the world under their feet. Life was nurtured by the world. The world gave life to all beings. No one except the world had the right to do so. However, the primogenitors had actually researched such a forbidden technique and created life on behalf of the world. Although it wasn't strictly speaking creating life, it wasn't far from it. The souls in the surroundings should have been dead, but the primogenitors wanted to go against the heavens and bring them back to life. This was equivalent to going against the heavens. As the spirit of the world, Little Ching was going against the heavens. In a sense, it was going against itself. After all, Little Qing represented the world. Coupled with the complicated relationship between Little Qing and the primogenitors, Little Qing's anger couldn't help but surge. Little Qing couldn't contain her anger and shouted angrily, "You're courting death." She didn't care about hiding her tracks anymore. After all, she already knew the answer to what she needed to investigate. It was because of the primogenitors' heaven-defying actions that the primogenitor realm had an endless supply of cultivators. The souls of cultivators who died in battle would automatically return to this miniature world and be resurrected. Therefore, the primogenitors didn't care about consumption because consumption didn't exist. They could be resurrected even if they died, so they didn't need to worry about it all. It was no wonder that Xiao Chun and the others felt that the primogenitor realm's cultivators were endless. It wasn't strange at all. With a furious roar, a terrifying pressure came from all directions, instantly enveloping the entire small world. In the face of this sudden pressure, the Qilin ancestor and ancestor Bai, who were standing beside the cauldron, were taken aback. However, they quickly shouted in a deep voice, "Spirit of the world." Although they hadn't seen each other for countless years, they weren't unfamiliar with each other's auras. After all, they came from the same origin. Their auras were essentially the same. Little Qing's figure quickly appeared in the sky. Her eyes were scarlet and filled with killing intent as she looked at the Qilin ancestor and ancestor Bai. She said coldly, "You deserve to die. Contact them." The Qilin ancestor immediately said to ancestor Bai. The Qilin ancestor knew that the two of them were no match for Little Green. They had to get the other primogenitors back as soon as possible so that they could defeat Little Green together. 5 primogenitors were enough to take on Little Qing. Once 8 primogenitors attacked together, they had a chance to defeat or even subdue Little Qing. At that time, they would be able to devour Little Qing's power and become the true ruler of the world. Ancestor Bai did not dare to hesitate. He immediately contacted Ancestor Mu, Ancestor Qing, and the others who were at the front line. Similarly, Little Green did not give the Qilin ancestor and ancestor White any chance to retaliate. Faced with Little Green's attack, the Qilin ancestor and ancestor White could only defend themselves. In an instant, the 3 of them engaged in a fierce battle. Your birth was a mistake from the very beginning. I should have gotten rid of you brothers back then. Oomph. Spirit of heaven and earth, we all come from the same bloodline and were born together by heaven and earth. Why can you become the orthodox of this heaven and earth, but we brothers can't? In my opinion, you should be the one in the wrong. Qilin ancestor did not back down in the face of Little Qing's angry roar. Hearing that, Little Qing snorted coldly. "Oomph, you have a glib tongue. Die." As Little Qing spoke, she slammed her palm forward. Instantly, the entire space was filled with spiritual energy and the power of order. As a spirit of heaven and earth, Little Qing did not have any understanding of the power of order. She was born with the ability to control the countless power of order in heaven and earth. The violent spiritual energy storm, coupled with the rich power of order, charged towards the Qilin ancestor and ancestor White. In response, the two of them did not hold back and gave it their all. However, the result of the collision was that the Qilin ancestor and ancestor White were sent flying. Both of them came from the same bloodline, but Little Qing monopolized half of the energy while the primogenitors shared the rest equally. Therefore, the 2 primogenitors were no match for Little Qing. "Today, the 2 of you will die." Little Qing shouted coldly when she saw the Qilin ancestor and ancestor White being sent flying. "Oomph. We don't know who will die yet." This was the first battle between Little Qing and the primogenitors after so many years. From the beginning, it was filled with killing intent. Little Qing would not give the 2 of them any chance. Seeing that Little Qing was about to attack again, the Qilin ancestor and ancestor White looked at each other. This time, the 2 of them did not choose to meet Little Qing head-on. They knew that they were no match for Little Qing, so naturally, they would not meet Little Qing head-on. Now, they only had one thought, which was to stall for time. When the other primogenitors arrived, it would be the time for them to counterattack. Obviously, it was not a wise choice to meet Little Qing head-on. As they dodged, they continued to fight. On the other side, Ancestor Mu, who was in the Netherchild universe, received the message from the Chilean Ancestor and Ancestor White immediately. After a few days, Ancestor Mu finally found the whereabouts of Shao Chun and the rest. At this time, he happened to block the path of Shao Chun and the rest. Seeing that Dongfang Yin and the old tree were not around Shao Chun, Ancestor Mu sneered. Shao Chun, what else do you have this time? Without Dongfang Yin, Shao Chun was no match for Ancestor Mu at all. Moreover, Ancestor Mu also had a great chance to kill Shao Chun. This was the opportunity that Ancestor Mu had been waiting for. Now, he finally caught it. In response, Shao Chun's face was gloomy and he did not reply. Ancestor Mu sneered. Shao Chun, surrender now and I will spare your life. Ancestor Mu was confident that he would win. He was not afraid of Shao Chun's tricks, because even if Shao Chun had any tricks, it would not be able to make up for the gap in strength between them. However, just as Ancestor Mu was about to attack, he suddenly received a message from Ancestor White, saying that Little Qing had attacked the small world of the primordial origin world. Ancestor Mu had to return quickly. Otherwise, the two of them would not be Little Qing's match. Ancestor Mu was stunned when he received the message. Then, he looked at Shao Chun unwillingly. He had seized this opportunity. As long as he attacked, Shao Chun would definitely die. However, the Chilean Ancestor and Ancestor Mu were in danger, and he had to go back to rescue them, killing Shao Chun or rushing back to rescue Yifutian. Patriarch Mu only hesitated for a moment before making a decision. He looked at Shao Chun coldly, then turned around and left, choosing not to do anything. Shao Chun was also confused about why Patriarch Mu would suddenly give up. Chapter 29-23. Shao Chun was puzzled by Ancestor Mu's sudden departure. It was definitely a God-given opportunity for Ancestor Mu. Without Old Tree and Dongfang Yun by his side, he definitely had no chance of winning against Ancestor Mu alone. Shao Chun was puzzled by Ancestor Mu's sudden departure. It was definitely a God-given opportunity for Ancestor Mu. Without Old Tree and Dongfang Yin by his side, he definitely had no chance of winning against Ancestor Mu alone. Moreover, judging from Ancestor Mu's appearance, he seemed to be ready to take action. Who would have thought that he would suddenly leave? This baffled Shao Chun. What happened? Mu thought to himself. The most likely reason for Ancestor Mu's sudden departure was that something had happened. Otherwise, Ancestor Mu would not have let go of such an opportunity. Shao Chun's guess was correct. Ancestor Mu had left because he had received Ancestor Bai's message. Although Ancestor Mu might have killed Shao Chun, it was also very likely that Ancestor Lin and Ancestor Bai would be killed by Little Qing. Compared to killing Shao Chun, Ancestor Mu was more unwilling to let Ancestor Lin and Ancestor Bai get into trouble. Moreover, Shao Chun's combat strength was not as good as his own, but Shao Chun was no longer an ant that he could kill at will. Shao Chun had the power to contend against primogeniture. Therefore, even if Ancestor Mu wanted to kill Shao Chun, it would not be easy. The two of them would have to fight for a while. As a result, Ancestor Mu would not be able to rush back in time to rescue them. Therefore, he had to make a choice. Ancestor Mu's choice was obvious. He would rush back to rescue them. Seeing Ancestor Mu leave in a hurry, Shao Chun was puzzled. However, he was secretly relieved. It was indeed very dangerous. If Ancestor Mu had taken action, Shao Chun was confident that Qin Shi and the others could leave safely. After all, it would not be a problem for him to stall Ancestor Mu. However, he would be in danger. Could it be Little Qing? Shao Chun knew that Little Qing had gone to the origin world. It was very likely that Little Qing was the reason why Ancestor Mu had left in such a hurry. Otherwise, Ancestor Mu would not be so nervous. In any case, Ancestor Mu's departure was not harmful to Shao Chun. On the other side, Ancestor Mu had left the Netherchild universe and used the space passage to return to the origin world. Little Qing had suddenly appeared in the origin world, so Ancestor Mu had to rush back to rescue Ancestor Mu. While Patriarch Mu and the other primogenitors were rushing back, the battle between Little Qing, the Chilean Ancestor, and Ancestor Bai was still ongoing. Little Qing clearly had the upper hand against the two primogenitors. The two primogenitors couldn't possibly stop Little Qing. Little Qing's murderous intent was fueled by the primogenitor's actions, so she didn't hold back at all. It seemed like she wouldn't rest until the two primogenitors were dead. Ancestor Qilin and Ancestor Bai were not having a good time facing the crazy Little Qing. They were under a lot of pressure. At this moment, they could only pray that the other Ancestor Bai could come back as soon as possible. With a slap, the Qilin Ancestor and Ancestor White were sent flying several hundred meters away. Before they could recover, Xiao Qing had already appeared in front of them. She didn't give them any time to catch their breath. She pointed a finger and a green light containing the power of laws blasted towards the Qilin Ancestor. At the same time, Little Qing took the opportunity to throw a punch at Ancestor Bai. The green finger light penetrated Ancestor Bai's shoulder, and the punch hit Ancestor Bai's abdomen. Both of them were sent flying again. It was an overwhelming advantage. Ancestor Bai and Ancestor Qilin could only hold on bitterly in front of Little Qing. Today, all of you will die, Little Qing said coldly. The murderous intent in her eyes did not diminish. With that, Little Qing didn't wait for the two of them to reply. She flew up again and chased after Ancestor Bai. Clearly, Little Qing wanted to kill one of them first. If she could kill Ancestor Bai and Ancestor Qilin, the origin world would be much less of a threat to Little Qing. If there were only 6 Ancestor Bai and Xiao Chun and the others left, Little Qing was confident that she could destroy the origin world in one fell swoop. However, even though Little Qing thought so, Ancestor Bai could not be killed as she wished. Even if Little Qing attacked, it was still the same. A powerful punch landed on Ancestor Bai's chest. If it was someone else, even an ancient life form, they would not be able to withstand such an attack. However, Ancestor Bai only spat out a mouthful of blood after taking the blow. His aura was a little weak, but he was not killed immediately. As an ancestor, his vitality was naturally very strong. It was not easy to kill Ancestor. Even Little Qing would not be able to kill him that easily. Little Qing was well aware of this. That was why she wasn't disappointed in the slightest when her punch failed to kill Ancestor Bai or even seriously injure him. This was to be expected. It would be strange if a progenitor was so easy to kill. Little Qing wouldn't have been helpless against the progenitors for so many years. She would have killed them one by one back at the origin of life. Damn it, Spirit of heaven and earth, do you really want to fight to the death with us today? Ancestor Mu shouted coldly when he saw Ancestor Bai injured. Patriarch Mu was the first to arrive. As soon as he appeared, he saw Patriarch Bai being punched in the chest by Little Qing. Patriarch Mu's entire body was sent flying. With a furious roar, Patriarch Mu rushed towards Little Qing and stood in front of her. Little Qing, who wanted to attack Ancestor Bai again, was blocked by Ancestor Mu. Little Qing had no choice but to attack Ancestor Mu. Scram! Ancestor Mu did not dare to be careless in the face of Little Qing's attack. His body flashed, trying to dodge Little Qing's attack. However, Little Qing would not let him do as he wished. Green light burst out from her fist and enveloped Ancestor Mu's body. Ancestor Mu felt as if he had been immobilized. His body could not move at all as he watched Little Qing's punch land on him. Ancestor Mu was sent flying again. However, this attack was not fatal to him. It did not even cause him any substantial damage. Seeing Ancestor Mu being sent flying, Little Qing went up to him. However, Qilin Ancestor was already there. At the same time, a spatial crack appeared in the sky. Ancestor Qing and Ancestor Qiu appeared in the sky. As soon as they appeared, they saw Ancestor Mu, Qilin Ancestor, and Ancestor Bai being sent flying. Ancestor Qing shouted coldly, "Spirit of heaven and earth, you're courting death." The Ancestor Bai's speed was faster than Little Qing had expected. It did not take long for them to arrive. Now that 5 Ancestor Bai had appeared, Little Qing clearly could not continue to crush them like before. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 29-24. With the arrival of Ancestor Qing and Ancestor Qiu, the primogenitors gradually turned the tables. Although they could no longer gain the upper hand, they were now able to fight Little Qing. They were no longer suppressed by Little Qing like before. With 5 primogenitors joining forces, Little Qing could no longer suppress them as easily as before. However, due to the anger in his heart, Little Qing still had no intention of retreating. What the primogenitors had done had completely crossed Little Qing's bottom line. They were acting on behalf of the heavens, and even wanted to create their own life. This was something Little Qing could not accept no matter what. Therefore, even though 5 primogenitors had arrived, Little Qing still had no intention of retreating. Ancestor Mu, Ancestor Qing, and the others' faces turned cold when they saw Little Qing not retreating. Little Qing had fought his way to the origin world and still didn't want to retreat. Did he really think that the origin world was his home? That he could come and go as he pleased? Coming alone, the primogenitors gradually had the intention to kill Little Qing. The main reason was that Little Qing was too arrogant. He still did not choose to retreat. Both sides were in a frenzy. However, it was still difficult to kill Little Qing with the power of 5 primogenitors. However, the other 3 primogenitors should be on their way back. When the 8 primogenitors joined forces and Little Qing did not have any helpers, they would have a chance to kill him. Since he did not want to retreat, they might as well make him stay here forever. The primogenitors thought so. The outside world did not know about the battle in the origin world. After all, a battle of this level was not something ordinary people could participate in. Only ancient creatures like Shao Chun and the others were qualified to participate in such a battle. The battle in the origin world was still ongoing. In the Netherchild universe, Shao Chun, who had narrowly escaped, immediately led Qin Shiru and the others to change their target. Patriarch Mu's sudden departure made Shao Chun suspicious, but he also guessed something. After some investigation, Shao Chun learned that Patriarch Mu had left the Netherchild universe, which further confirmed Shao Chun's guess. Something must have happened in the origin world. Otherwise, Ancestor Mu would not have left the Netherchild universe in such a hurry. Something that could make Ancestor Mu so nervous must be related to Little Qing. After all, only Little Qing could make the ancestors react so strongly. I wonder if they found anything. Shao Chun knew that Little Qing had gone to the origin world. However, he didn't know if Little Qing had gained anything. Did she know what the ancestors were doing? Why did the warriors of the origin world give people a feeling that they couldn't finish fighting? For the time being, there was no way to deal with the origin world. However, after Patriarch Mu left, Shao Chun quickly made the decision to launch a counterattack. Although the number of people in the origin world was much greater than his side, without Patriarch Mu, Shao Chun had the capital to launch a counterattack. It should be known that Chun Yin alone was not enough to stop Shao Chun and the others. Shao Chun, Dongfang Yun, and Old Tree were all strong enough to fight Qin Yin. The remaining 2 ancient creatures were enough to deal a devastating blow to the origin world. Shao Chun naturally would not miss the opportunity to launch a counterattack, while Patriarch Mu was not in the Netherchild universe. It would be best if they could use this opportunity to severely damage the origin world. After making the decision, Shao Chun immediately sent a message to Dongfang Yun and Old Tree, telling them his plan. The 2 of them had no objection. Since Patriarch Mu was not in the Netherchild universe, it was indeed a good opportunity to launch a counterattack. For a time, the people who were originally scattered all over the place quickly gathered together. There were still more than 200,000 people left. They gathered together and prepared to launch a counterattack against the origin world. What should we do next? Dongfang Yin asked while looking at Shao Chun. Dongfang Yin had always followed Shao Chun's lead. Dongfang Yin basically would not refuse whatever Shao Chun said. It was the same this time. Dongfang Yin directly gave the decision to Shao Chun. Shao Chun did not hold back and said directly, "Attack directly. I will stop Qin Yin. Kill as many as you can." As long as they stopped Qin Yin, Dongfang Yin and Old Tree would be unstoppable. With the two of them attacking, even if there was a huge difference in numbers, they were still not afraid. After all, at Dongfang Yun and Old Tree's level, even if they were facing a world lord, they would not be able to resist the two of them. It was not too difficult to kill a world lord, let alone the warriors below. Therefore, Xiaochen was not worried at all. He did not need any strategy. He just needed to directly attack. Moreover, Xiaochen's only concern was time. He did not know when Ancestor Mu would return. Therefore, before Ancestor Mu returned, Xiaochen had to do his best to kill as many warriors of the Origin World as possible and inflict heavy damage to the Origin World. Without wasting any time, as soon as Xiaochen's voice fell, everyone rushed towards the Origin World's encampment. Although the Origin World's encampment was ready, without Ancestor Mu's presence, Xiaochen and the others attacked. For a time, Chunyan's face was extremely unsightly. Xiaochen, you're courting death. Seeing that Xiaochen actually dared to take the initiative to attack, Chunyan immediately appeared. His eyes were filled with coldness as he shouted. However, Xiaochen did not have the intention to talk nonsense with him and sneered. It's hard to say who's courting death. Then, without waiting for Chunyan to speak, Xiaochen attacked him directly. There was no time to talk nonsense with him. He had to end the battle before Ancestor Mu returned. Seeing Xiaochen attack without saying anything, Chunyan was furious. However, he had no choice but to fight back. Both of them were ancient era experts. Moreover, Xiaochen's strength was slightly stronger than Chunyan's. Therefore, even though Chunyan attacked with all his strength, he could only hold Xiaochen back temporarily. As for Dongfang Yun and Old Tree, just as Xiaochen had expected, no one could deal with them. Allowing the two ancient era experts to attack without restraint was definitely a devastating blow. Dongfang Yun and Old Tree, who had no one to stop them, started a massacre. The warriors of the Origin World were killed by them one after another. Seeing people being killed continuously, Chunyan's face became more and more unsightly. However, there was nothing he could do. After all, Chunyan could not deal with Xiaochen at all. Chunyan had already done his best to fight with him. Therefore, Chunyan could only watch helplessly as Dongfang Yun and Old Tree massacred the warriors of the Origin World. There was nothing he could do to stop them. Although he was anxious, there was nothing he could do. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 29-25. Dongfang Yun and Old Tree, who had no scruples, were disastrous existences to the Origin World. Every time, many Origin World cultivators would fall at their hands. Dongfang Yun and Old Tree, who had no scruples, were disastrous existences to the Origin World. Every time, many Origin World cultivators would fall at their hands. Even World Masters found it difficult to resist the attacks of these two, let alone the Ancestor Realm Masters and Emperor Realm Masters below. They couldn't even resist the aftermath of their attacks. As for Xiaochen, his purpose was clear. He wanted to stop Chunyan. As for other matters, Xiaochen didn't need to worry about them at all. Dongfang Yun and Old Tree would take care of them. As long as he stopped Chunyan and didn't let him interfere in the battle below, his task would be completed. At the same time, because of Dongfang Yun and Old Tree's intervention, the pressure on the other Cosmos' experts was greatly reduced. They didn't need to worry about anything at all. They only needed to follow Dongfang Yun and Old Tree and kill the fish that escaped the net. This was the consequence of not having an expert to oversee the battle. If Ancestor Mu was here, he could stop Xiaochen and Dongfang Yun, and Chunyan could stop Old Tree and prevent the three from interfering in the battle below. Then, everything would be completely different. Unfortunately, Ancestor Mu wasn't in the Netherchild Cosmos right now. Therefore, Xiaochen and the others could do whatever they wanted because there was no existence that could threaten them at all. If Xiaochen was a little more ruthless, he could even kill Chunyan without any scruples. Of course, Xiaochen didn't think about it, but he gave up in the end. Although he, Dongfang Yun, and Old Tree could indeed kill Chunyan if they joined forces, they wouldn't have enough time. After all, even if the three of them joined forces and were 100% sure that they could kill Chunyan, they wouldn't have enough time. An ancient creature couldn't be killed so easily. If they couldn't kill Chen Yin before Ancestor Mu returned, and they didn't have a big advantage in the battle below, wouldn't they lose both their people and their wealth? Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Xiao Chun chose a safer way, which was to kill the warriors of the origin world. As for Qin Yin, he would deal with him later. After truly becoming an ancient life form, only then did Xiao Chun know how vigorous the life force of an ancient life form was and how many life-saving methods they had. Looking at Xiao Chun himself, it was not hard to guess that killing Chen Yin was not something that could be done so easily. Chen Yin could naturally see that Xiao Chun didn't have much killing intent towards him. However, even so, it didn't make Chen Yin feel any better. From the corner of his eyes, Chen Yin saw that many warriors from the origin world were being slaughtered. With the existence of Old Tree and Dongfang Yun, the warriors from the origin world couldn't resist at all, let alone fight back. The gap between them wasn't small. It wasn't something that could be easily made up for. So, Chen Yin's heart could be said to be bleeding as he watched the cultivators from the origin world die one after another. Xiao Chun, aren't you afraid of Ancestor Mu? What do you think? Xiao Chun, Ancestor Mu won't let you go. You're talking as if you will let me go if I stop. Chen Yin, you should be glad that you're not the one who will die today. Xiao Chun simply snorted when Chen Yin used Ancestor Mu to threaten him. Was he afraid of Ancestor Mu? If he was, Xiao Chun wouldn't have resisted the origin world. Since they were already enemies, why would he be afraid? This time, he was taking advantage of the situation to take Chen Yan's life. Xiao Chun wasn't afraid of Chen Yan's threat at all. Chen Yin couldn't do anything about it. He just snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. He knew that no matter how much he said, it was meaningless. Ancestor Mu wasn't here, and Xiao Chun was leading a counterattack. Naturally, he wasn't afraid of any threat. At this moment, only Ancestor Mu could turn the situation around. Only Ancestor Mu could turn the situation around if he came back in time. Otherwise, the hundreds of thousands of warriors in the origin world would be killed today. Perhaps even Chen Yin would be in danger. Because if Ancestor Mu couldn't come back in time, Xiao Chun and the other two would definitely shift their target to Chen Yin. After all, killing an ancient creature was definitely more profitable than killing ordinary warriors. Even a fool could understand this. The reason why Xiao Chun didn't do that was probably because he was worried that Ancestor Mu would come back. However, once the battle was over and Ancestor Mu hadn't returned, Xiao Chun and the others would probably target Qin Yin. Facing the siege of 3 ancient creatures, no matter how confident Chen Yin was, he knew what the result would be. At that time, it would be difficult for him to escape. The reality was just as Chen Yin thought. As the battle continued, the warriors in the origin world were slaughtered crazily by Dongfang Yun and Old Tree. After a few hours, the hundreds of thousands of warriors in the origin world were left with only a little over 100,000. For a time, the difference in numbers was completely reversed. Under such circumstances, even if Dongfang Yun and Old Tree didn't take action, the experts of the various universes had the absolute advantage. Ancestor Mu hadn't come back yet. Sure enough, Dongfang Yun and Old Tree's target quickly shifted to Qin Yin. Since the outcome of the battle had been decided, if they could kill Qin Yin, it would have a great impact on the battle. Even if it was the origin world, losing an ancient era creature would be a great loss. After all, there were only 3 ancient era creatures in the origin world. They looked at each other, and without hesitation, Old Tree and Dongfang Yun immediately attacked Qin Yin. They didn't need to worry about the battle below. The strength of the experts of the various universes was enough to crush the origin world. Now, Old Tree and Dongfang Yun were looking for a chance to kill Qin Yin. Qin Yin's face darkened when he saw the 2 of them attacking him. However, it was impossible for him to retreat now because Xiao Chun and the other 2 had blocked his escape route. Kill him, Old Tree shouted. Since Ancestor Mu hadn't come back yet, Old Tree naturally wanted to give it a try. Xiao Chun naturally had no objection to this. It was obviously the best result if they could kill Qin Yin. The 3 of them joined forces, and Chen Yin was struggling to hold on. However, it didn't take long for Chen Yin to be injured. As time went by, Chen Yan's injury became more and more serious. If the situation continued, Chen Yin knew that it was only a matter of time before he was killed unless Ancestor Mu came back in time. However, could Ancestor Mu really come back in time? Chen Yin didn't know what had happened when Ancestor Mu suddenly returned to the origin world. He only knew that Ancestor Mu's face was very ugly when he left. He didn't say anything and just left directly. Something must have happened in the origin world. Otherwise, Ancestor Mu wouldn't have left in such a hurry. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 29-26. Before Ancestor Mu left, he didn't tell Chen Yin anything. He just left without saying a word. He looked very anxious. Obviously, something unexpected had happened. Therefore, Chen Yin didn't know when Ancestor Mu would come back. But now, facing Xiao Chun and the other two besieging him, Chen Yin could only hold on bitterly. He didn't have much strength to fight back at all. Moreover, as the battle continued, the killing intent in Xiao Chun, Dongfang Yun, and Old Tree's eyes became more and more intense. Now was indeed the best time to kill Chen Yin. As long as they killed him before Ancestor Mu returned, it would definitely be a big blow to the origin world. After all, the importance of an ancient creature was self-evident. Just like in this battle, Xiao Chun and the other two had taken advantage of Ancestor Mu's absence to kill everyone in the origin world. This was the terror of an ancient creature. An ancient creature that no one could stop was definitely a devastating blow to the warriors below. Seeing Chen Yan's condition getting worse and worse, Xiao Chun and the other two's attacks became more and more violent. There was no mercy at this time. If they could kill him, they would definitely kill him on the spot. Xiao Chun and the other two's thoughts were very clear. Chen Yin smiled helplessly because he really didn't have any other way. Just as the four of them were fighting, Chen Yin was about to reach his limit. Ancestor Mu finally arrived. As Ancestor Mu's aura descended, a spatial crack was torn open. Ancestor Mu's figure strode out of it. Only then did Chen Yin feel a little more confident. Ancestor Mu had finally arrived at the last moment. Regarding this, Xiao Chen's eyes revealed a hint of unwillingness. If Ancestor Mu didn't appear, Chen Yin would definitely die here today. But who would have thought that Ancestor Mu would actually appear at the last moment? At a glance, he saw Chen Yin being beaten miserably. Without saying anything, Ancestor Mu immediately joined the battle. If he was a little late, Ancestor Mu was really afraid that Chen Yin would be killed directly. After a fierce battle with Little Qing in the origin world, Ancestor Mu had just returned to fight with Xiao Chun and the others. However, with Ancestor Mu's participation, Chen Yan's pressure was reduced a lot. Moreover, Xiao Chun didn't want to fight too much. After all, they had achieved their goal. Almost all the cultivators in the origin world had been killed. Although it was a pity that they hadn't been able to kill Chen Yin, it wasn't something they couldn't accept. Thinking of this, Xiao Chun immediately chose to retreat. There was no point in continuing the fight. With Ancestor Mu around, it would be difficult for the three of them to kill Chen Yin unless they could suppress Ancestor Mu. Unfortunately, that was not possible. He took the initiative to retreat, but Patriarch Mu didn't choose to pursue. After experiencing a series of battles, Patriarch Mu's situation wasn't too good, especially in the battle with Little Qing in the origin world. Ancestor Mu had suffered some injuries. Although they weren't serious, he definitely wouldn't be able to hold on for a long time. Moreover, looking at the cultivators in the origin world below, almost all of them had been killed by Xiao Chun and the others. Chen Yin was also seriously injured. Even if Patriarch Mu caught up with Xiao Chun and the others, he wouldn't be able to do anything to Xiao Chun and the others. Both sides tacitly retreated at the same time. Patriarch Mu glanced at Chen Yin and said indifferently, "Let's heal first." Patriarch Mu didn't say much about the origin world to Chen Yin. After all, it wasn't something to be proud of. What was worse was that someone had sneaked into their lair. In the end, the 8 primogenitors had joined forces to force Little Qing to escape unscathed. Although Little Qing had been injured by the 8 primogenitors in the end, the 8 of them hadn't been able to kill Little Qing. The 8 primogenitors could indeed suppress little Qing if they joined forces. Moreover, they could even trap and severely injure little Qing with some methods. However, that would require some time to prepare. Little Qing was clearly aware of this. Therefore, after the 8 primogenitors had arrived, little Qing didn't continue to fight. Instead, she chose to retreat directly. The primogenitors could only watch helplessly. It wasn't easy to kill an ancient creature, let alone a world spirit like little Qing. Although it wasn't impossible to kill her, it was extremely difficult to do so. After causing a ruckus in the origin world and forcing little Qing to escape unscathed, Patriarch Mu felt helpless and annoyed at the same time. Patriarch Mu also returned to his residence. He didn't care much about the casualties of the people below. After all, even if they died, they would be resurrected soon. There was nothing to worry about. Moreover, because everyone had returned in time, little Qing hadn't been able to destroy the cauldron in the origin world. As a result, the origin world could continue to resurrect the warriors who had died in the battle. After some time, they would be replenished. Therefore, Patriarch Mu wasn't worried. He closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged. Patriarch Mu began to heal his injuries. For the time being, he didn't have the strength to deal with Xiao Chun and the others. It seemed that he would have to wait for a while. It was the same for Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, and the beast slaves. The primogenitors had suddenly left, and everyone had seized the opportunity to launch a counterattack. However, the primogenitors had returned in time at the last moment. Although they had taken advantage of the situation, they hadn't been able to completely turn the situation around. This was very depressing. However, after the primogenitors had returned, no one chose to launch a counterattack. Instead, they had tacitly chosen to remain calm. For a time, the war in the 4 universes seemed to have calmed down. However, this kind of peace was obviously only temporary. This was something that everyone knew. As for Xiao Chun and the others, they were most concerned about what had happened in the origin world or whether little Qing had found any useful information. After retreating, Xiao Chun led everyone to an empty city to rest. He looked at Xianyuan Ling, Long Qing, and Qin Shiru. Wait for me here. I'm going to the land of creation. Since the primogenitors had returned, little Qing should have returned to the land of creation. Xiao Chun wanted to ask if little Qing had found anything in the origin world. Yes, be careful. Xianyuan Ling nodded in response. He told everyone some things to pay attention to. The most important thing was to not act rashly, at least before he returned. Although Patriarch Mu probably wouldn't choose to act now, given the current situation in the origin world, Xiao Chun still had to be cautious. Xianyuan Ling and the others naturally nodded in response. After the battle, just now, everyone needed to rest and reorganize. Naturally, they wouldn't take the initiative to fight. After arranging everything, Xiao Chun closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. His soul doppelganger directly rushed to the land of creation. At the same time, Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, and the bee slaves had also arrived at the land of creation, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 29-27. Everyone had hurried over with their soul clones. Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, Bee Slave, and the other ancient creatures had gathered in the land of creation. Little Qing was also among them. Everyone had hurried over with their soul clones. Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, Bee Slave, and the other ancient creatures had gathered in the land of creation. Little Qing was also among them. Everyone knew that little Qing had gone to the origin world. After all, it wasn't a secret. Now that little Qing and the other primogenitors had returned, everyone obviously wanted to know if little Qing had discovered anything in the origin world. Seeing everyone arrive, little Qing didn't even need to ask as she guessed their intentions. Her face didn't look too good as she said in a deep voice, "I already know the secret of the origin world." Xiao Qing had indeed gained something in the origin world. Xiao Chun and the others were delighted by this. After all, if they could find out about the methods behind the scenes in the origin world, then they would have a way to deal with it. It was better than being completely ignorant. All of them looked at little Qing with anticipation. Facing their gazes, little Qing said, "Those old fellows have mastered the technique of resurrection. Those who died in battle can be resurrected. So, no matter how many warriors you kill, the origin world will soon be replenished." As soon as she said that, the faces of Xiao Chun and the others turned unsightly. How could they fight? In that way, wouldn't the cultivators of the origin world be immortal and indestructible? What could they do? They could be resurrected after being killed. Didn't that mean they couldn't be killed at all? Little Qing didn't say anything as she looked at everyone's changing expressions. Little Qing was extremely angry about this, but there was nothing she could do. She hadn't expected the origin world to have mastered such a technique. This technique was indeed very difficult to deal with in the land of creation. The atmosphere became very gloomy. After all, this wasn't good news for everyone. After a moment of silence, Lin Yin finally said, "Is there any way to stop them?" "There isn't. Even I can't do it. Those old fellows won't give me the chance." First of all, the primogenitors had hidden the cauldron of heaven and earth in an independent small world. Moreover, this small world had been created with the power of space origin. To put it simply, even little Qing couldn't tear open the space of that small world and could only enter through the entrance. However, there was only one entrance to that small world. Moreover, after experiencing this incident, the primogenitors would definitely be prepared. If he acted rashly, he might even fall into a trap set by the primogenitors, let alone succeed. After all, even little Qing didn't dare to underestimate the 8 primogenitors. Once he fell into their trap, it wouldn't be easy for him to escape. Therefore, in little Qing's opinion, it was almost impossible to stop the primal ancestors. It turned out that this place was too hidden. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Moreover, it was impossible for Xiao Chun and the others to sneak into the primal origin world with her. Therefore, it was very difficult for little Qing to stop the primogenitors by herself. Everyone couldn't help but reveal a wisp of disappointment when they heard little Qing. Since they couldn't stop the primogenitors, what method could they use to deal with the origin world? After all, once the origin world possessed such a method, the cultivators of the origin world were equivalent to undying existences. It was utterly impossible to kill them. So, if this situation continued, then it would definitely be the origin world side that would lose. There was no other possibility. No wonder the origin world didn't care about consumption at all. With such a technique, why would they care about consumption? The origin world could revive however many cultivators they killed. They didn't have to worry about numbers at all. The origin world's technique really couldn't be underestimated. While everyone was silent, little Qing spoke. "There's only one way now, and that's to master this technique just like the origin world." "Can we?" "Yes, I can do it. However, there's a condition." Little Qing proposed her own idea, and that was to give them a taste of their own medicine. Didn't the origin world possess the ability to bring the dead back to life? Then, the land of creation could do the same. Moreover, little Qing did possess such an ability. After all, even the primogenitors could do it, so there was no reason why little Qing, a spirit of the world, couldn't do it. However, there was another condition if they wanted to master the technique like the origin world. Just as the primogenitors had said, if they wanted to revive the dead, they had to erase their emotions and desires. After all, this kind of revival wasn't allowed by heaven and earth. They had to pay a price. To put it bluntly, the resurrected people couldn't be like ordinary living beings. Erasing their emotions and desires was the best and only way. "What's the condition?" asked Xiao Chun. Just like the origin world, erasing their emotions and desires is the only way to revive the dead. It's the only loophole of heaven and earth's principles. To put it bluntly, this kind of revival was actually taking advantage of the loophole of heaven and earth's principles. Living beings without emotions and desires weren't real living beings in the eyes of heaven and earth. Therefore, such existences were like puppets that could be revived through other means. However, Xiao Chun was stunned when he heard that. Then, he shook his head and refused. "No, we joined forces to stop the creation of the new world." If we're the same as the origin world, what's our original intention? Of course, Xiao Chan would not agree with such a method, because it would go against the original intention of everyone when they were together. It was to prevent the establishment of the new world, but now, if they had to erase the emotions and desires of all living beings in the world, what would that be? What was the difference between that and the origin world? As soon as Xiao Qin said that, Lin Yun and the others nodded silently. Indeed, this method was different from everyone's original intention. It completely went against their original intention. However, facing Xiao Qin's objection, Qing's face darkened. But if we don't do this, what can we use to fight against the origin world? If this continues, I don't need to tell you what the final result will be. Don't tell me you don't want to think of a solution, even if you know it's a failure. Everything has a price. It's impossible to be perfect. Facing such a situation, we have to make a choice. It's not about the price. It's the opposite of our original intention. If we have to pay such a price, why should we fight against the origin world? Isn't it better to just surrender? Xiao Chan said in response to Qing's words. Xiao Chan would never agree to such a thing. He couldn't accept it either. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 29-28. Xiao Chan was resolute. He didn't agree with little Qing's suggestion at all. If they followed little Qing's suggestion, would the warriors on their side be erased just like the warriors in the origin world? Xiao Chan was resolute. He didn't agree with little Qing's suggestion at all. If they followed little Qing's suggestion, would the warriors on their side be erased just like the warriors in the origin world? Xiao Chun and the others had rebelled against the origin world because the origin world wanted to create a new world. However, what would happen if they followed the origin world's example? First of all, they couldn't even pass their test. Not only Xiao Chun, but Lin Yun, Dongfang Yun, and Mu Ling Xian also didn't agree. After all, it would go against their original intention. Seeing that they were all against it, little Qing grimaced. If so, what good idea do you have? Do you want to watch all the warriors of the other universes die? The origin world has such means. They aren't afraid of consumption, but we're different. We can't afford it. Apparently, little Qing wasn't satisfied with their objection. In his eyes, the warriors on the ground weren't important. As long as they were useful, little Qing didn't care what method he had to use. Just like what Ancestor Mu had told Xiao Chun, little Qing had helped Xiao Chun and the others. Was it really for the sake of the creatures in this world? It was a joke. Little Qing was the same as the ancestors. They were all superior beings. To put it bluntly, the way they looked at the creatures in this world was to use them. As long as they were useful, it didn't matter what method they used. The ancestors could create a new world for their own purposes. Of course, little Qing could erase the emotions and desires of the creatures in this world to resist the ancestors. It wasn't impossible. Looking at little Qing's gloomy face, Xiao Chun could guess what he was thinking. Whether it was the ancestors or little Qing, the creatures in this world were just tools to be used. They didn't have any sympathy or pity for them. For the time being, Xiao Chun didn't know what to feel. He didn't feel comfortable. After all, he was one of the creatures in this world. I don't agree. What's the difference between us and the origin world then? Xiao Chun was resolute. He didn't mince his words. No matter what little Qing was thinking, Xiao Chun would never agree, because he wouldn't allow himself to do that. Facing Xiao Chen's resolute objection in front of everyone, little Qing's face looked even grimmer. Little Qing had treated Xiao Chen's side. Little Chun SSS. But it was all because Xiao Chun was of value to them. Little Qing wanted to use Xiao Chun and the others to fight against the origin world. She wanted to kill the primordial ancestors. That was why they had come together. That was why little Qing had decided to help Xiao Chun and the others. But now, Xiao Chun had openly opposed her decision, which annoyed her. A person who didn't listen to her orders. Why waste her energy? She coldly glanced at Xiao Chun. Then, she said indifferently, "Okay, that's all. You guys go back. Be careful of the people from the origin world. Old tree, be slave, you guys stay." Little Qing didn't say anything else. She asked them to leave. However, she only asked Xiao Chun, Dong Fong Gang, Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, and the others to leave. Old Tree, Beast Slave, and the others were asked to stay. It was apparent that Little Qing was estranged from Xiao Chun and the others. Xiao Chun felt it very clearly, but so what? Even so, Xiao Chun still would not change his decision. It was a matter of principle. Xiao Chun didn't say anything else. He took a deep look at Little Qing and disappeared gradually. At the same time, Lin Yun and the others who relied on Little Qing's helped to break through to the ancient being level left one after another. In an instant, only Old Tree, Beast Slave, and Little Qing's loyal followers were left. Old Tree, Beast Slave, and the others were different from Xiao Chun. They could be said to be Little Qing's loyal followers, and it was impossible for them to betray her. After all, they had followed Little Qing for many years, unlike Xiao Chun and the others who had just interacted with Little Qing. As Xiao Chun's group left, Little Qing swept a glance at everyone. At that moment, Beast Slave couldn't help but say, "Madam, Xiao Chun and the others are also..." The Beast Slave obviously wanted to intercede for Xiao Chun. Anyone could see that Xiao Qing was already unhappy with Xiao Chun. But before the Beast Slave could finish, Xiao Qing interrupted him. "All right, let's talk about this later. Let's talk about the current situation first." Little Qing didn't listen to Beast Slave at all. She shut him up with a single sentence. Then she said slowly, "I didn't expect the origin world to have such means. If we don't react accordingly, we will definitely lose this war. So I made up my mind. Just like the origin world, I will erase the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the warriors below and master the means of resurrection." Little Qing sent Xiao Chun and the others away, but she still wanted to continue. It could be said that she had made up her mind. Regardless of whether Xiao Chun and the others agreed or not, Little Qing was going to do it. Upon hearing this, the Old Tree said hesitantly, "But Xiao Chun and the others..." Old Tree knew that once Xiao Chun and the others learned about this, they definitely wouldn't be able to accept it. At that time, they might cause some trouble. But Little Qing said, "Don't worry about them. Just get rid of them when necessary." Killing the primogenitors was Little Qing's ultimate goal, because only by killing the primogenitors could Little Qing be considered the true spirit of this world. During this process, anyone who tried to stop her would be her enemy. Little Qing wouldn't let such a thing happen. Even if it was Xiao Chun, as long as he dared to block her path, she would eliminate him. Everyone's expression changed slightly when they heard Little Qing's words. They all knew Little Qing's determination. Right now, a rift had probably appeared between Little Qing and Xiao Chun and the others. As time passed, this rift would probably grow bigger and bigger. Everyone started to make preparations at Little Qing's command. At the beginning, they naturally needed some experiments, but this wasn't too difficult for Little Qing. It should be easy to solve. Under Xiao Qing's arrangement, the experts of the land of creation couldn't secretly capture a group of martialists from various universes. Little Qing then began her experiments. While Xiao Qing was making preparations, the Beast Slave on the other side had a complicated expression. On one hand, it was because of Little Qing's command. On the other hand, it was because of Xiao Chun. He had a good relationship with Xiao Chun, and they were friends. But now, between Little Qing and Xiao Chun, the Beast Slave knew that he had to make a choice. Because based on the current situation, Xiao Chun and Little Qing shouldn't be able to reach a consensus unless Xiao Chun was willing to lower his head. But was that possible? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2929. On Little Qing's side, she was secretly carrying out the same method. Those cultivators who had been captured to the land of creation also had their 7 emotions and 6 desires erased by Little Qing. At the same time, she was trying to revive them. The method Little Qing used was the same as the primogenitors. It was not difficult for Little Qing. After all, Little Qing and the primogenitors were of the same origin. If the primogenitors could master the same method, Little Qing could too. Xiao Chun returned to the Netherchild universe. In the next few days, more reinforcements arrived from the origin world. Xiao Chun was not surprised because the origin world could provide endless reinforcements to the front line since it had mastered such a technique. On the contrary, Chen Yin was rather surprised. At this moment, Chen Yin had already found out the truth of the matter from Ancestor Mu. Chen Yin did not expect that the origin world could develop such a method. In the origin world's encampment, Chen Yin looked at Ancestor Mu and said with a bitter smile, "Is this the reason why the origin world created a new world? By erasing the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the warriors, they could be revived endlessly. They can become unkillable existences. It's one of the reasons. After all, it's a good thing for the world, isn't it?" Ancestor Mu replied faintly. Being able to revive people endlessly was indeed one of the reasons why the origin world created a new world. Ancestor Mu did not hide it. Since it had come to this point, there was no need to hide it. This was the origin world's last resort. However, now that little Qing knew about it, Xiao Chun and the others would know about it too. Therefore, it was not a secret. Moreover, it did not matter if the world knew about it. What could they do? Even little Qing couldn't destroy all of this, because after the previous battle, the primogenitors had already laid down layers of restrictions at the entrance of the miniature world. It wouldn't be so easy for little Qing to infiltrate the miniature world again, and the primogenitors would have enough time to rush back. Since it was exposed, it was no longer a secret. Therefore, Ancestor Mu told Chen Yin about it. After the initial shock, Chen Yin didn't know what he was feeling right now. However, since they had such a method, wouldn't the origin world be in an invincible position? Only now did Chen Yin realize why Ancestor Mu didn't care about the losses on his side. No wonder it was like this. With such means, if it were him, he probably wouldn't care about these insignificant soldiers. After all, they could be resurrected if they died, so what was there to care about? The battle in the Netherchild universe was still not over. Xiao Chun had no intention of giving up on the Netherchild universe. Although there was a rift between Xiao Chun and Xiao Chun, he still had no intention of giving up. Resisting the origin world was the decision of Xiao Chun and the others from the beginning. They would not give up because of other things. However, with the steady stream of reinforcements, Xiao Chun and the others gradually found it difficult to hold on. Moreover, little Qing didn't seem to have any intention of supporting Xiao Chun and the others in the land of creation. They felt that little Qing had given up on them. This was probably the result of Xiao Chen's firm opposition to little Qing. Because of Xiao Chen's opposition, little Qing was already dissatisfied with Xiao Chun and the others. The number of warriors under his command was constantly decreasing. Xiao Chun couldn't get any support from the land of creation. Even the old tree was summoned back to the land of creation by little Qing. After another difficult battle, Xiao Chun and the others successfully escaped and found a secret place to hide. At the same time, Lin Yun took the initiative to contact Xiao Chun and asked about the situation on Xiao Chen's side. Holding a token in his hand, Lin Yun's virtual image appeared on the token with a wry smile on his face. Lin Yun said helplessly, "Brother Xiao Chun, how's the situation on your side?" "Not good. There are less than 200,000 people left. It's the same for me. Moreover, the people from the land of creation have all retreated. The others stayed because they didn't listen to the orders of the land of creation. I think we've been abandoned." Lin Yun said bluntly. She didn't provide any reinforcements and sent the people from the land of creation back. Little Qing did have the intention of abandoning Xiao Chun and the others. She wanted to use the origin world to eliminate Xiao Chun and the others. How could Xiao Chun not know about this? Moreover, Xiao Chun also understood that little Qing was waiting for him to lower his head. However, was this possible? With a wry smile, Xiao Chun said, "People who walk different paths can't make plans together." This was a fundamental disagreement that couldn't be resolved so easily. Xiao Chun understood, and little Qing certainly understood as well. How could it be possible to resolve this gap so easily? However, how long could Xiao Chun and the others hold on if they couldn't get the support of the land of creation? They had to think of a way. Lin Yun took the initiative to contact Xiao Chun for this matter. After all, if this continued, Xiao Chun and the others wouldn't be able to hold on for long. In response, Xiao Chun said, "Even if we're like moths flying into a flame, we can't shrink back. Otherwise, what will we do? Brother Lin Yun, don't forget that we're also members of this world." Lin Yun was stunned when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Then, she smiled and shook her head. "You're right. Let's do our best and leave the rest to fate. My subordinates gradually know about this matter. If this continues, I'm afraid it won't be easy to control." The origin world and a land of creation both wanted to erase the emotions and desires of all living beings in this world. This was obviously a secret that couldn't be hidden. After all, many people had noticed that something was wrong during the battle. Those people who had been killed had appeared in front of them again. How could they not be suspicious? They were clearly dead, but they had appeared again. What was going on? Therefore, this matter couldn't be hidden. Not only Lin Yun, but many of Xiao Chen's subordinates also knew about this matter. It was definitely a huge blow to their morale. Many people's hearts were already dead when they faced the origin world. How could they continue fighting if they could resurrect after killing them? Their fighting spirit had weakened by more than half. If this continued, they wouldn't be able to fight at all. Moreover, Xiao Chun could clearly feel that Ancestor Mu hadn't used his full strength during this period of time. To put it bluntly, it was more like a cat playing with a mouse. It was as if he was deliberately teasing them. Otherwise, without the old tree, if Ancestor Mu and Chun Yin really wanted to attack, Xiao Chun and Dongfang Yin wouldn't be able to stop them at all. Ancestor Mu alone was difficult to deal with, let alone Chun Yin. However, Ancestor Mu didn't do so. It was precisely because of this that Xiao Chun and the others could bitterly hold on until now. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 29:30. On one hand, little Qing had given up on them. On the other hand, it was Ancestor Mu's plan. He clearly had the opportunity to take them down, but Ancestor Mu had no intention of doing so. Xiao Chun didn't know what Ancestor Mu was thinking. After ending the call with Lin Yun, Xiao Chun smiled bitterly. Things had come to this point in the end. There was indeed a rift between him and little Qing, and this rift was expanding as time passed. He didn't know how it would develop in the end. Perhaps in little Qing's eyes, Xiao Chun was already a stumbling block. In the end, it's still a struggle for power. In the face of power, all living beings are just chess pieces that can be used at will. The primogenitors are like that, and so are the spirits of heaven and earth. In the eyes of the primogenitors and little Qing, all living beings were chess pieces that could be used. It was just a matter of whether they were useful or not. At this moment, Xiao Chen's opposition was a hindrance to little Qing. It was also because of this hindrance that the relationship between Xiao Chun and little Qing took a turn for the worse. Just as Ancestor Mu had said at the beginning, the relationship between Xiao Chun and little Qing was unstable. Both sides had their own thoughts, and it was easy for cracks to appear. The current situation was indeed, as Ancestor Mu had said, but Xiao Chun couldn't do anything about it. Looking at Xiao Chun, who was deep in thought, Dongfang Yin said, "What do we do now? I don't think we can count on the land of creation." Dongfang Yin also understood the current situation very well. It was almost impossible to get little Qing's help now unless Xiao Chun was willing to lower his head. However, could Xiao Chun do that? If he could, Xiao Chun probably wouldn't be Xiao Chun. Upon hearing Dongfang Yin's words, Xiao Chun shook his head. "Let's take it one step at a time. It doesn't matter even if we have to fight to the death." Xiao Chun was prepared to fight to the death. In addition, Xiao Chun was still considering another problem. Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, Xiao Wan, Xiao Qing, and Bai Ruyue were all in the land of creation. The place of creation should have been the safest place. After all, the progenitors couldn't easily invade the place. Therefore, after the battle began, Xiao Chun left his family in the place to protect them. But now, with his relationship with little Qing, was the place of creation still safe? If there really came a day when he and little Qing completely broke up, would little Qing do something harmful to his family? He absolutely could not let anything happen to his family. This was what Xiao Chun was most worried about. Moreover, if Xiao Qing used his family to threaten him, what could he do? Xiao Chun was considering whether or not he should bring his family to his side. However, staying by his side did not necessarily mean that they would be safe. For a moment, Xiao Chun was a little conflicted. He felt as if he was sandwiched between two big rocks. On one side was the world spirit Little Qing, and on the other side were the progenitors. Xiao Chun and the others felt as if they were sandwiched between these two behemoths. They didn't know how to choose at all. Moreover, they didn't have the slightest authority to decide. They could only go with the flow. Xiao Chun didn't like this feeling very much. He couldn't decide anything at all, let alone do anything for the people in the world. He lowered his head in silence. On the other side, in the Origin World's encampment, Chunyin also said to Ancestor Mu, "The land of creation hasn't made any movements. Moreover, the old tree is said to have returned to the land of creation. Now is the best opportunity to annihilate Xiao Chun and the others. Why haven't we made a move yet?" The changes on Xiao Chen's side naturally couldn't be hidden from Chunyin. Since the land of creation hadn't made any movements and the old tree had left, it was obviously the best opportunity to annihilate Xiao Chun and the others in one fell swoop. Therefore, Chunyin couldn't help but persuade Ancestor Mu to make a move. In response to Chunyan's persuasion, Ancestor Mu smiled and said, "Then why do you think the land of creation hasn't made any moves yet?" This, Patriarch Mu didn't answer and instead asked. Chunyin didn't know why the land of creation didn't take any action at all. From the beginning, Chunyin had been thinking of annihilating Xiao Chun and the others in one fell swoop. This way, he would be able to take down the Netherchild universe. When the time came, he would be able to attack the root of the problem and open the door to the land of creation. However, it was apparent that Ancestor Mu had different thoughts from Chunyin. Seeing that Chunyin didn't know how to answer, Ancestor Mu said plainly, "What do you think is the point of taking down Xiao Chun? It's better to keep him alive and cause some trouble for the world spirit instead of killing him." Through various signs, Ancestor Mu had already guessed something. In other words, Ancestor Mu knew what Little Qing would choose when she entered the Origin World. Although they hadn't seen Little Qing for many years, the primogenitors still understood her character very well. Given Little Qing's character, she would definitely make the same choice after knowing that the Origin World had the method to resurrect from the dead. After all, Little Qing had to master such a method if she wanted to compete with the Origin World. However, there was a crucial problem in mastering such a method. She had to erase the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the cultivator, just like the Origin World. Little Qing definitely wouldn't care about this. She just wanted to defeat the primogenitors. However, what about Xiao Chun? Would Xiao Chun agree? If Little Qing really had such a thought, Xiao Chun would definitely oppose it. Because of the land of creation, these universes could avoid the torment of the Origin World. But now, the land of creation had become an existence similar to the Origin World. Were they just pawns that could be sacrificed at any time in the eyes of the land of creation and the Origin World? Were they just objects to be used in the eyes of those big shots? Was there nothing else besides that? Many people knew the reason why the land of creation was able to do this. It was because the Origin World had mastered the method of reviving cultivators, and this method could only be realized by erasing the 7 emotions and 6 desires. That was why the land of creation was able to do this. Because of this, the land of creation acted against them. Everyone was filled with grief and indignation. They were also members of this world, and they were also existences of flesh and blood. However, in the eyes of those in power, they were merely a group of chess pieces with value. Are we really just pawns? Who else in this world can help us? Are we really just pawns abandoned by this world? Could it be that only those who were blessed by the heavens could be considered as beings recognized by the heavens and earth? What are we? At this moment, everyone felt the injustice of this world. Compared to the ancient creatures, the ancestors, and the spirits of this world who were blessed by this world, the people of this world were not accepted by this world. At the same time, more people hoped that there would be a guardian deity who truly cared about them, unlike the land of creation and the origin world. Please collect, vote, recommend. In addition, Little Ching's actions during this period of time were even more impossible to hide from Ancestor Mu. In that case, Ancestor Mu had a reason to keep him alive. He wanted to sit back and reap the benefits. So under such circumstances, how could Ancestor Mu possibly attack him? Although Shao Chun knew that Patriarch Mu was using him to fight Little Ching, he had no choice even if he knew. Shao Chun couldn't ignore the commotion in the place of creation. He couldn't be incompetent and turn a blind eye to it. Don't worry, I'm fine. Let's go together, Dong Fengyun said in response. Dong Fengyun definitely wouldn't agree to let Shao Chun meet Ancestor Mu alone. Not only her, but even Qin Shu and the other women wouldn't agree. Although Shao Chun was helpless, he could only nod and agree. Moreover, in addition to the women, the cultivators of other universes also spoke up. Lord Shao Chun, we'll go with you. If the origin world dares to attack, we'll fight it out with them. Although they didn't know why Shao Chun wanted to meet Ancestor Mu, these people still chose to stand firmly on Shao Chen's side. It was for no other reason than that Shao Chun was the person they trusted the most. Both the origin world and the land of creation treated them as objects to be used. Only Shao Chun was sincerely fighting for all living beings. Of course, this was also related to Shao Chen's identity. Compared to those ancient creatures who were high and mighty when they spoke, people like Shao Chun, who had reached this height through his own efforts, were naturally easier to accept. After all, Shao Chun was still a member of all living beings. Moreover, they didn't have anyone to rely on now. They could only rely on Shao Chun. Looking at the crowd, Shao Chun didn't say anything. He nodded, and the group immediately rushed to the origin world's encampment. Along the way, more and more people gathered. The cultivators who were originally scattered all over the Netherchild universe had all gathered together. There were only 100,000 people left, and they had all chosen to follow Shao Chun. The group arrived at the origin world's encampment in a grandiose manner. As soon as they appeared, many new cultivators flew out of the encampment. At the same time, Ancestor Mu and Chun Yin also appeared in front of Shao Chun. Looking at Shao Chun, Chun Yin shouted coldly, "What? Are you going to walk right into the trap?" Glancing at Chun Yin indifferently, Shao Chun ignored him. Instead, he looked at Ancestor Mu and said, "I have something to talk to you about." A smile appeared at the corner of Patriarch Mu's mouth, as if he was not surprised at all. Just as Shao Chun thought, Patriarch Mu had long expected Shao Chun to return. Given Shao Chen's personality, it was impossible for him to remain indifferent to what had happened in the place of creation during this period. He would have definitely stepped in to stop it. Even if we die, we will have no complaints. However, Lord Shao Chun, you don't have to get involved. They were the world masters of these universes, but Shao Chun had already surpassed the level of a world master and reached the realm of an ancient creature. Moreover, with the relationship between Shao Chun and Little Qing, as long as Shao Chun chose to stand by and do nothing, Little Qing would not attack Shao Chun. Under such circumstances, if they asked themselves honestly if they were in Shao Chen's shoes, they would probably choose to protect themselves. After all, humans were like this. No matter what happened, they would always put themselves, their families, and the people around them as the center. Knowing what this person meant, Shao Chun smiled and said, "When the nest is overturned, no egg will remain intact. Moreover, don't forget that I'm also a lifelong member of this universe. There is no reason for me to stand by and do nothing. My lord, from now on, our lives are yours." Hearing this, the four world masters bowed respectfully and said in a firm tone, "The origin world and the land of creation treated all living beings as chess pieces, but Shao Chun had never thought this way. From the beginning to the end, he had always regarded himself as a member of the living beings of this universe. He was not like the primogenitors and little Qing, who were like high and mighty gods, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 29:35. Shao Chun and the others could be said to be ancient life forms that truly stood on the side of the world because, unlike other ancient life forms, Shao Chun and the others stood out from the rest of the world. Therefore, fundamentally, Shao Chun was different from other ancient life forms. Shao Chun didn't say much after hearing the words of these world lords because it was meaningless to say anything at the moment. Shao Chun directly took out a voice transmission talisman and sent a message to Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, and Mo He, and the others. "You can start now." Shao Chun naturally wouldn't act alone. He had already discussed with Lin Yun and the others. While Shao Chun was negotiating with Patriarch Mu, Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, and the others were also negotiating with other primogenitors, and the results could be said to be poles apart. The primogenitors had obviously communicated with each other before, so they didn't stop Shao Chun and the others at all. Instead, they were very cooperative. Obviously, the primogenitors were happy to see some trouble for the land of creation. Soon, Shao Chun received the message. Lin Yun and the others were also prepared. For a time, Shao Chun, Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, and the others also led people and rushed to the rear. The Netherchild universe was directly handed over to Ancestor Mu. This was something that could not be helped. Since the decision had been made, there would definitely be losses, and the Netherchild universe was one of the losses. Moreover, for the current Shao Chun, there was no longer any meaning in defending the Netherchild universe to the death. This was because defending the Netherchild universe to the death was for the peace of the rear. But now, the actions of the land of creation in the rear had really angered Shao Chun and the others. Since little Qing wanted to do the same thing as the primogenitors and turn the world into walking corpses without emotions and desires, then what was the point of Shao Chun defending the Netherchild universe to the death? In that case, it was better to just let it go. On one hand, he wanted to save the people of the various universes. On the other hand, Shao Chun said to Dong Fang Yun, "Be careful when you sneak into the land of creation." Shao Chun and Dong Fang Yun decided to split up. Dong Fang Yun would secretly head to the land of creation and rescue Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao. After he succeeded, he would immediately leave and head to the prearranged meeting place. In the current situation, Shao Chun naturally could not leave his family in little Qing's hands. Therefore, it was necessary for him to rescue his family. In response, Dong Fang Yun nodded solemnly. After the group left the Netherchild universe, Dong Fang Yun left with his subordinates. Dong Fang Yun did not bring many people, but all of them were world lords. Seeing Dong Fang Yun leave, Shao Chun continued to rush forward with a cold expression.